a mover and a seconder for the Councillor Pillen, seconded by Councillor Gale. For the apologies, all those in favour, please raise your hand. That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we'll now move on to agenda item 1.1, disclosure of interest. Oh, sorry, councillors. Sorry. Councillor Gale, I've been advised that you would like to table documents at tonight's ordinary meeting. Councillor Gale, would you like to provide information regarding these documents?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'd like you to accept a petition on behalf of Angelique Parak, Gareth Stevens, Jenny McCullough and the Davistown Progress Association. It has 449 signatures that are opposing a DA 57958-2020. It's for a 26.8 metre telecommunications tower on residentially zoned land at the Saratoga Exchange. My intent is to have the DA matter before Council as quickly as possible. Councillor Marquette and I have both raised concerns and called the DA up before our fellow councillors for determination. My understanding is that there is also more than 15 objections that have been put forward. However, in the instance that the DA matter is still to be determined at the commencement of the local planning panel, then I trust that Council will forward the petition and the objections to the local planning panel members for their consideration, should that occur.
Thank you, Councillor Gale.
So I'll send this to you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. As previously advised, due to technical constraints, we're unable to hold the public forum. However, the following written submissions were received prior to the meeting and have been distributed to all the councillors. Item 3.1 DA 803-219, 48 McLaughlin Avenue, Long Jetty Boarding House. We have Eric and Jessica Thorsby against, Lucy Kilgannon against, Bryce Poole against, Anne Davidson and Monica O'Sullivan against, Lauren Poole against, and Laurie Ellis for. Item 3.4, the Greater Lake Memorial Structural Plan, results of public consultation. We have Sarah Jane Rosen against, Sue Wynn against, Matthew West against. Item 3.6, supplementary report, amended planning proposal request for Glenworth Valley, Barton Lawler for. Item 3.7, planning proposal, Dawson YE RSL Club, Pacific Highway Dawson, Brett Ellis for. Sorry, councillors, we will now move on to disclosure of interest, item 1.1. Councillors, are there any disclosures of interest? Please. Okay, Councillor McLaughlin. So what I'm going to do is call out all your names and then we'll go from there. So Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Hogan's hand was up. Councillor Marquette, Councillor Pillen. Okay, all right. So I'll go back to Councillor McLaughlin, please.
Yes, a non-pecuniary interest in that I know the developer for 48 McLaughlin Avenue, and also on the matter of Glenworth Valley, a non-pecuniary interest there on the basis I know the family there, and a non-pecuniary interest on the Greater Lake Munmora structure plan on the basis I know of ownership of people up there as well.
So they're all non.
They're all non-significant.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
okay, Councillor Hogan. Sorry, who's unmuting?
Okay, start again. Unmuted myself.
Yeah. FYI, we will unmute you, so you won't need to attempt to unmute. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 3.7, planning proposal for Dawson RSL. I'd like to declare a significant non-pecuniary interest because the organisation I work for has a working relationship with the Dawson RSL and we've accepted donations from them in the past. So I will be leaving the Chamber Zoom meeting. I also have a declaration on item 4.4, which is the Community Grants Program. That's a non-pecuniary less than significant interest because some of the organisations I've worked for. But I will stay in the chamber and be objective.
Thank you. Councillor Marquette.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In regards to item 3.1, I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary but a significant interest in regards to that one, as my brother lives in the very next street, so I don't think it would be appropriate for me to vote on that particular item. So I'd like to be removed from the vote in that one, please.
Thank you. Councillor Pillen. You have to accept the mute, Councillor Pillen.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, it hadn't come up. Actually, I would like to declare a pecuniary significant interest 3.1, the boarding house, 48 McLaughlin Avenue. Our business is currently doing work for this builder on 2 other jobs, so I'll need to remove myself from the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. I note that Mr. Murphy also has a disclosure. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to declare a significant non-pecuniary interest in item 3.4, Greater Lakeland Mora Structure Plan, as I have property within the structure plan area. And on item 3.7, non-significant non-pecuniary, as I am an ordinary member of the Dawson YE RSL Club.
Mr. Bolgoff. You're muted. No, we can't hear you speak. Mr. Bolgoff. No. Nothing, no volume. Do you want to tap your headphone? Can you hear me? Okay, yeah. No, nothing. Perhaps take your headset off, see if the blue light on the side is flashing. Yeah. Speak.
Can you hear me
Yes,
now, Madam Mayor?
yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay,
Good job.
thank you.
There you go.
Awesome. I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest in relation to item 7.3, as I have property in that area and I will be leaving the virtual room. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bolgoff. Okay, councillors, there are no further declarations. All is good. Do I have a mover to accept the disclosure of interests? Councillor Holstein, second by Councillor Burke. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Bess, sorry. That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 1.2, which is a confirmation of the previous meeting. Councillors will now move to 1.2. Do I have a mover of the motion that's on the screen? Councillor Holstein, second by Councillor Hogan. I'll now put the motion as moved by Councillor Holstein, second by Councillor Hogan. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 1.3 is the notice to deal with, the intention to deal with matters in confidential. There are no confidentials, so therefore I note that there are no confidentials. Can I have a mover of that motion? Councillor McGregor, second by Councillor Holstein. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Councillors will now move on to item 1.4. Is that right? Sorry, councillors. Yep, 1.4. To deal with matters by exception. Councillors, I note that we already have a lot of the items already up. Sorry, I'm now running 2 different sheets. My apologies. Thought so. Yep. Thank you. So we already have some items. So I will run through the items that have not been up for debate and to see if there's any changes. So right now, items not up for debate. I repeat, not up for debate is items 2.1, item 3.1, item 3. Councillor McLaughlin, you're putting your hand up.
Debate 3.1, so.
Sorry, do you want to debate it?
Yeah, I think we should. Yeah.
Okay, councillor, in your name. Item 3.2, item 3.5, item 3.6, item 4.4, item 4.5, item 4.7, item 4.8, item 4.9, item, oh, sorry, Councillor Gale, 4.9.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was 4.6 that I flagged, not 4.5. Thank you.
Sorry, no. So these are the ones we're not. So 4.5, we're not debating.
I beg your pardon. Yep.
4.7, we're not debating. 4.8, these are the not debating. 4.8, still not debating. 4.9, still happy. 4.10, still happy. 7.3, notice of motion 7.3. Notice of motion 7.4. Okay. So I also note, if I can be so bold, we have 2 items that are up for deferral, which would be item 3.4 and item 7.2 up for deferral. Okay, councillors. So now I'll quickly run through, just for accuracy, the ones that we will be debating in the chamber tonight, and then we will move and second that motion. So we will be debating 3.3. We will be debating 3.1 now. Sorry, 3.3, 3.7, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.6, 5.1, 7.1, 7.5. Okay. Have I got a mover of the motion? Councillor McGregor. Second, Councillor Pillen. Sorry. Councillor Best, did you want to speak?
No, quite, yes. Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to have a bit of difficulty on this screen to inject questions. For some reason, I'm not getting the column for questioning, but I just don't want to lose what I've got, so I'm going to be very careful. It's been quite a difficult afternoon to get this system I'm sitting around working. Lisa, you've asked for the 2.1 mayoral minute not to be discussed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that it's just going to go through in Globo, or
Yes.
right? Well, I think it should be discussed under the current pandemic circumstances, so I would call it. Thank you.
Okay. Under your name. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor, did I get a mover? No. Oh, Councillor McGregor, Councillor Pillen it was. All those in favour, councillors, for the exception method, thank you. Councillor Best, are you voting for the accept? Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin, I couldn't say. Okay, so all those in favour, please, of the motion, please raise your hand. Councillor Greenaway, no, yep, great. Thank you, unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Difficult times, thank you, I appreciate that. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 2.1, the mayoral minute. In the name of yourself, Councillor Best, do you want to debate that?
Can you give me a page number, because I'm having to scroll on the other machine here.
Sure.
I got it here, I suppose. It's
Got
a
it.
short screen. What page number is it?
45. It's on the
45.
sheet. So
Thank you.
on, yeah, have you actually
as
got
I'm-
this sheet,
as-
Councillor Best?
Yeah, but
For
it's over
help.
here on. It's on.
Okay, all right.
It's on this machine, and
Oh, okay,
and
right.
the business paper's on this machine, and the
Oh.
podcast is running on that machine, and I'm
Okay.
on this machine. There's 4 of them here. It's wonderful. I'm not the mayor, so I'm going to need a seconder.
Councillor Pillen?
Thank you. Thank you. Question before I discuss this, and I think I might consider an amendment to it. Gary, Mr. Murphy, you can hear me?
Yeah, he can hear you.
Mr. Murphy, it was drawn to my attention recently that the state government has just announced a $395 million package for local government to access around the COVID situation we're facing, and that money is there for a raft of reasons, supports, staff supports, infrastructure supports, blah, 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 as I read it. But as I'm also learning in my own business world, so much of the announcements is so hard to follow. Have you had a chance to look at this state initiative of $395 million to go to local governments to support ourselves and the ratepayers yet?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Best, yes, the announcement was made last night. So as you've identified, there are 3 key elements to the $395 million package. The first is a job retention allowance, which is similar to the JobKeeper program that the Commonwealth announced and from which local government was excluded. That's the one element. It is not clear as to how that is going to be applied. The second element is in relation to the emergency services levy, which in Central Coast Council's case would equate to around about $625,000 of benefit, which would occur in the next financial year. And the third element is in relation to Council's ability to access T-Corp funding, Treasury Corp funding. And there's also the ability for councils to seek deferral of interest and principal repayments for up to 6 months. Again, the devil is in the detail. We do not know what those elements are. We're trying to get information from the various sources, but I appreciate it was only announced last night, so we're not entirely clear on the implications just yet.
So Gary, with that understanding and the package being announced and the Mayor writing this mayoral minute in good faith some time ago, as I wrote a coronavirus update 8 weeks ago and left for New Zealand not having any idea I'd come back to this, but I withdrew that motion. Do you feel that this motion, whilst its intentions are to be applauded, that things have moved on since the crafting of this and that we as a council should possibly look at crafting something that is more reflective of where the government's trying to go with some packages, even though it's not clear at this stage? Because I mean, this is kind of calling for supports and calling for packages and asking for the government to do things. Well, they look like they've done something. We just don't know the devil and the detail yet. So should we be taking this opportunity to word something that, as the 3rd largest council in New South Wales, we want to line up for our share of this $390 million, and I just want to do it in the cleverest way, maybe not biting the hand that might be going to feed us here.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Best, if you have a look at the mayoral minute,
Yes.
and the mayor, I guess, would be best placed to address some of the elements in there, but there are some things which have not been announced by the government to date, and that's in relation. So I guess it's just a question, as you say, about whether the council feels that the announcement last night is sufficient of a economic stimulus for local government, or whether the council is requesting more. And in particular, I think the request that the Mayor wrote to the Minister for Local Government in relation to the local planning panels and the cost burden of that, which is, I wouldn't say unique to Central Coast Council, but it's not something that other councils in the state have to bear.
So if we asked staff to give us an urgent report back on the last night's announcement so that we could get a full appreciation of the level of support the state's giving. And from that, from your team looking at that, Gary, and then reporting to us, and then possibly bringing this to the next meeting to put together, some observations that you're going to be able to make in the next, week and a half, possibly. I mean, it is COVID territory. We need answers to this stuff very quickly. I'm having a terribly difficult time with job seeker and job keeper when it comes to apprentices. Let me tell you, there's a lot of devil in a lot of detail I'm staying awake at night figuring about. So Lisa, please don't get me wrong. I'm not having a go at this motion. I am genuinely saying, should we maybe now, in the light of this 24-hour announcement, that we now actually get you to come together with your staff, Gary, give us the information, give us the $390 million bottom line. What does it mean? Are we left in? Are we left out? What really does it mean to us? And then craft something, Lisa, for the next round. Just a suggestion. I just want to not bite the hand that's looking to feed us. And we are the third largest. If there's money on the table, I want my ratepayers to get it.
Councillor Best, look, appreciate that the state have put their hand in their pockets. However, the detail is yet to be, the devil's always in the detail. However, I believe that we don't have another meeting for a fortnight, and if we keep waiting, we're just waiting. And right now we need help and we need support. I still feel we should go forward with it. This motion has been put through all councils through local. It was a motion that was crafted throughout all of local government New South Wales. I also believe that once we do know what is in the detail of what the state government has, drafted, that we will then take that into consideration and thank when we need to thank, and obviously observe what we've got. But I think that if we don't send this, then we're sort of behind the 8 ball. I still feel that we need to send this off, and then we have a look at the detail, and then we can obviously say thank you, but there's lots of things we haven't got. And as you just pointed out, job seeker, job keeper, councils aren't getting at all. So I think I still want to move forward with this particular mayoral minute tonight. Councillor Marquette, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whilst realising the majority of this motion is obviously around financial support, and I do support the motion as well, I just wanted to, through you, Madam Mayor, possibly ask Mr. Murphy a question in regards to point 4 and 5, which they're still talking financial support, of course they are, but they're also talking about how all 3 levels of government, we're thanking the state and federal governments for what they've done, and we're talking about, sort of in a nutshell, how we can all move forward together. What I wanted to get is a bit of an idea of, as we get through this, as lockdowns start to come in place, we're not just going to need financial support, because we can throw money at everybody. You can throw money at a small business. If it can't operate, it dies. It withers and dies, no matter what you throw at it. What I want to know tonight, if through you, Madam Mayor, from staff, is, as the federal government says, yes, we can start to decrease the level of lockdown that we've got, and we move away from lockdown slowly. If particular state governments, obviously we're with the New South Wales state government, of course, I realise that, but across the country, premiers have decided to do particular things like schools. Obviously, the federal government says, let's send our kids to schools, and New South Wales and Victoria and Queensland say, no, we're not. So as the lockdowns come into place, if the federal government says all the local cafes on the Central Coast can open, they can open tomorrow, and our state government says, no, we don't believe they should, through you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Murphy, where do we stand there? Because these people need to operate as soon as they possibly physically can. They need financial support, of course, but people need to get back to their jobs. Where would we sit if the federal government says, let's decrease the lockdown measures, but the state government says no? That was to you, Mr. Murphy.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just checking if I was muted or not before I said anything. Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Marquette, I guess it's a challenging one, because I think, as we've seen, the Prime Minister has attempted through a national cabinet to try and get consensus across the states where he can, but as you also pointed out, some of the states have decided to go their own way. I think if you look at some of the public health orders that the state government has issued, they tend to be the principal ones, and I guess in relation to cafes and trading hours, I'll be corrected by Director Cox perhaps, but they are probably the primary, I guess, guiding principles that would determine how we would act, and in fact whether council had a role other than say curbside dining or some of those type of activities. So I think your sentiment is good in that it's trying to get the community going, but I guess it also depends on the relevant state legislation that we are predominantly beholden to.
So the answer to the question is, in this circumstance, we are 100% beholden to the state legislation. Okay, thank you, Mr. Murphy. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillors, there are no further questions. As I said, Councillor Best.
So Lisa, Madam Mayor, if I could add an 8 under the 7 on the basis of what Mr. Murphy's just outlined, and it would be something to the effect that council notes the recent $395 million funding package to local government via the state, and that council request through the CEO an urgent report around the details of this initiative. The rest of it, with Troy, I'm happy with the rest of it. I just want us to get our head around this funding package if we need to move quickly. That's all.
Yeah, look, I appreciate that. In the discussion that we had, the briefing, I guess, that was the consideration that would happen, that once the staff knew the detail, that we'd be briefed on what the detail of the state package was, and then we would act according to that. So thank you.
That then lets the ratepayers know that we're on it as well, and they can see on the podcast, and they can see in the outside world that we're very much across the need for detail, and that we reflect that in the motion. That's all I'm seeking.
Great. Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
councillors. I'll move the mayoral minute by Councillor Best and second by Councillor Pillen. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Hogan, are you? Okay. So we have
Okay.
Okay, it's unanimous then. Thank you, councillors. Okay. Sorry, councillors, I too am working with pages of stuff. Councillors, item number 3.1, which is the DA. Oh, sorry, Councillor Pillen. Bye-bye. Councillor Marquette, see you later. Just a reminder for our audience that both Councillor Pillen and Councillor Marquette have significant interests, so they have been removed from your screen. So you won't see them while this matter is being debated, nor can they hear us, and we can't see them, and just like you guys can't see them as well. So item 3.1, DA 803-2019 48 McLaughlin Avenue, Longjetty Boarding House. In the name of Councillor McLaughlin, will you be moving that? Yeah, we'll unmute you. Councillor McLaughlin?
I'd like to speak against it, so I'm happy to move it with an amendment that we don't grant consent. So.
Well, that's a complete. So therefore, does anybody want to move it as is on the business paper? Councillor Gale, I'll second it. Okay, no. So Councillor McLaughlin, you now want to do an amend. You want to do a foreshadowed motion. Am I correct?
Well, no, I'll just speak against the motion that's up. So
you're just going to speak against it. Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Gale, would you like to speak for the motion?
Just briefly, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just rising to support this particular motion. We need boarding houses, and from the report that was sent through from staff, and I thank them for all their work they've done, it seemed to fit the bill, and so I consent with the staff that we give consent and move forward with this particular boarding house. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll waiver my right to speak. Councillor McLaughlin, I understand you want to speak against.
Yes, if I could, thanks. I think when I saw it just being passed through on mass without any debate at all, I thought that was not fair to the residents that have put up a major objection to it. If you look at the number of objections we've had to it, it's been very, very strong. And I think just to actually have this pass through without any comment would be disrespectful to them. And I do think the constraints of the site, a very small site that would be battling to get a duplex site on a major roundabout, quite a busy arterial road, I don't think is appropriate for the thing. I think the developer's a quality developer. I think their South Street development was adjoining a commercial car park and that sort of thing fitted the bill there. But I do think this is out of character for Shelley Beach, and I think the residents have made their position very strongly. Felt against it, and the opposition to it has been very, very strong. We've all had emails and comments on it, and I think to just to put it through on the basis of en masse that we were going to do would be just disrespectful. So I don't think the site's appropriate for the actual suburb. I think a site of this density where you would be battling to get a duplex on it is I think the epitome of what the boarding house situation is to our zonings. We don't, the mockery of the densities that you get under what would normally be residential 2A is been made loud and clear by the residents. So I won't support it in this thing. Not that I don't think the guy's a good developer. I think the actual building is probably better than what's there, but I think the site has major constraints for that density.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. Do we have any further speakers? No, there are no further speakers. Therefore, councillors, I will put the motion forward as moved by Councillor Gale, second by Councillor Matthews. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor McGregor, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Gale, Councillor Greenaway, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Smith, Councillor Burke. All those against? Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Best. I declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. We're bringing the two councillors are coming back to the room. I can see you both. Thank you. Councillors, we're now moving on to item 3.3, which is the planning proposal application RZ 2019 45 Mulloway Road, Chain Valley Bay. I have both Holstein and Councillor Best. Councillor Best, are you wanting to move that? Councillor Best. Councillor Holstein, do you want to second that?
Yes, I'm happy to move it.
Hang on, sorry. Oh, hang on, I was just checking with the seconder first.
But Chris wants to add a small addendum to it, and I'm happy to have that addendum added to Chris.
So Councillor Holstein, can we unmute? Councillor Holstein, do you want to add your addendum, please? Or you need to
thank you, Madam Mayor. I had given that earlier to the staff. It is a part 8 on the motion, and I think your councillors will see it there. Is that it now? That is, that council notes the need for the RMS to upgrade the intersection of Pacific Highway and Chain Valley Road.
Great, thank you. Councillor Best, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, look, in fact, Chris and I spoke about it this afternoon, and I have spoken to so many people for so many years about the intersection at Mulloway, as we have a number of other intersections in that area over the last 10, 15 years that really are going to need some serious addressing as time goes forward. We're learning a lot in the Munmora Master Plan about egress and access issues through the back areas of that precinct, and I think we're getting clever in our planning instruments, our planning thinking about trying to solve that Pacific Highway gridlock that's beginning to come our way. But look, on the issue, councillors, I think this site's something that the staff have been looking at for quite some time. And Scott, I know you're a bit shy in the photos here on the screen, but I know you're listening, and I would like to pass on, and I'm sure I speak for councillors, that your team, Karen Tucker, Scott Duncan, Rodney Margan, all those people have worked very hard in trying to create, I think, a fairly sensible outcome for a site that is sorely needed in the area. Again, we just had a debate a moment ago where Bruce and I couldn't bring ourselves, whilst that developer is a good developer. I went to that site and had a look at it. I didn't speak on the last item, but I really have got some issues about that being a suitable boarding house site for densities. Whereas this particular application, as you can see on, I think it's page 98, that aerial view shows that you've already got significant affordable housing accommodation and a lovely community, I may say. I know a lot of the people in the Valhalla facility, and it's well run by the management. I'll give them a real shout out. They run a really good facility up there, and they're listening on the podcast to the residents. Take a bow, because you're a good example of what I think village life can look like. And I think this site's going to complement that up there. So to the staff, hats off. Here we are in a COVID disaster, and we're going to have significant unemployment issues heading our way. I've seen 2 recessions in my life, but I don't think I've seen unemployment like I think we're going to see. And we need to give people jobs. We need to give them a future. We need to give them a home. And this starts that journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Best. Councillor Holstein, did you want to speak to that? We'll unmute you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, just to thank Councillor Best, the mover of the motion, for accepting it. I took the time to go up for the site inspection. I was satisfied. There was a couple of us councillors there, but the one thing I did really note, and history tells me, having been around a few years, you could see that there was an urgent need within the issue of the road upgrade. Both reports that I've read through give indication. I just wanted to enforce that comments from the report in the actual motion about the upgrade of the road, as I see that being a major issue. Maybe not now, but definitely as development happens in the future. So I thank Councillor Best for accepting the addendum to the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hogan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually oppose this one at Chain Valley Bay, and one of the reasons I do is that what I can see here, both on the map and spending a lot of time up in that area, is that are we turning the whole of the Lake Munmora area into a manufactured home village? If the same thing was happening down south, there'd be a complete uproar. However, I don't even think that our community has been consulted well on this. I believe there's not a lot of support for another mobile home village. If you look at what is already there, we're just encroaching into the wildlife there. We're taking down our environment zones. And I think the other thing that concerns me is the spot zoning. So in 2012, there was some sort of state legislation where we weren't to spot zone just for this particular type of development. So, and then we continued to do it. And then up in the north of the Shire, before COVID, we weren't getting newspapers. We weren't, communities weren't able to see the DAs. But the first place they see it is in a business paper, and there's a complete uproar. So in all due respects, Councillor Holstein and Best, I really don't think that our community has been consulted in full, and I just can't support it, even though I very much so lead and support affordable housing. There's also a lot of manufactured homes up in that Lake Munmora area, and that is a grave concern for that community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hogan. Councillors, I note that there are no further hand. It's all right. You're right to reply, Councillor Best. I'm just double checking. Hang on. I'll unmute you, Councillor Best. Do you want to do right to reply?
I I want a question. Sorry, question. Thanks, Lisa.
And
If
then
I
will you
could,
wrap up with your right of reply?
I will very quickly wrap up with my right of reply. I appreciate
Good
that. I
job.
think we're doing quite well so far. Everything's still functioning. It's good.
On your
You're
four
on-
screens.
You're on tender hooks waiting for something to crash. It's interesting. Hey, look, Councillor Hogan raises some interesting observations, and you know, I mean, I've been watching this site in council for more than a decade, and we've been here 2.5 years, Councillor Hogan. So I think we need the staff to be given the opportunity, Lisa, Gary. Mr. Cox is listening, and I believe we can get audio of him. And Councillor, if I could, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Cox, the Director of Planning, whose team I just congratulated a minute ago for their excellent work in this and very long-standing work. Can Mr. Cox come on so I can ask him some questions, please, Lisa?
Yes,
Madam Mayor?
we can get him on right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Here he is.
Mr. Cox, good evening. How are you? Good, just nod.
Good afternoon, Councillor Best.
Good afternoon. Councillor Hogan raised 3 key points that I thought your staff, being professional, would have likely addressed. So if I may start with the lack there of consultation and the fact that the community doesn't know anything about this. Could you just cover off on what your staff did in consultation and for how many years they may have done that?
Okay, Councillor Best. There's a number of factors to that. First of all, the site's identified in the North Wyong structure plan for future residential development. Secondly, this is a planning proposal, so it's different to a development application. With a development application, once it's received, you go out to neighbour notification. With a planning proposal, they submit a high-level planning report, and it gets reviewed. And if it's felt that it has some merit, it then would come to council. Actual community consultation is the next phase. If council endorsed this proposal tonight, it would then go to the state government seeking a gateway determination. If the state government grant that gateway determination, it will then put certain parameters around what it expects for community consultation. Also too, as part of not only that for community consultation, the staff would also go out to a number of government agencies, environmental agencies, the RMS, to see if it's appropriate for them as well too. So this is just the first base of many milestones to go ahead throughout the process. And throughout that process, there will be a number of opportunities to engage with the community to see whether they support it or not.
And further, Scott, when you mentioned the structure plan, when I was referring to consultation in Wyong Council, the structure plan was part of years of consultation.
I believe it was a document that was developed over a number of years by the state government in consultation with the former Wyong Council.
Now, Councillor Hogan says, and quote, take down the environment. Like there's some significant environmental issues that your staff have missed on this site. And just from your previous answer, we can quite clearly see that the process here is just that. We are on step 5, and I think Councillor Hogan's on step 55. But I'm looking at the aerial map, Mr. Cox, on page 98. I do see that it looks rather pristine on that site. I just wondered what your staff thought about the environmental takedown that might occur here. I just find it interesting.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Best, the proposal involves 2 zonings. It involves an RE2 private recreation zone, which up the top, which would enable a development of a potential manufactured home estate, and down the bottom there's a treed area where the vegetation is that has been identified to be zoned E2 environmental conservation. So the intent is to protect the vegetated areas of the site.
So none of that vegetation is going to be suggested to be removed in that large swage of vegetation to the east of the site.
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, Councillor Best, at this stage it's identified that an E2 environmental conservation zone would be applied to that.
And in reference to your planning panel outlining the the consideration that was suggested by the previous speaker around spot zonings, well, that kind of doesn't kind of fit the bill, does it?
I suppose the fact that it's identified in the North Wyong structure plan would identify that it's not purely a spot rezoning. So there has been some strategic thought put into it by a state government strategic document. All structure plans require future rezonings to ensure that a structure plan would come to life, and I suppose this is part of that process.
Thanks, Mr. Cox. And I just want to give you and your staff the opportunity to respond there. So thank you, Lisa, for your patience. And William,
Councillor Best, actually, sorry, I'll just, Councillor Smith would like to a question.
I'm not right.
No, sorry, just at this stage, we'll go to Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I did just want some clarification through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Cox, if that's possible, more for the benefit of those that might be watching, because I think I share some of Councillor Hogan's concerns about whether this creates livable and the best that we can do in terms of, accommodation for our community. I note that the rezoning is going to an RE zoning, which normally wouldn't allow this kind of development. So through you, Madam Mayor, just to Mr. Cox, could Mr. Cox just explain that my understanding is this is coming to us under a SEP, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, no, it's a planning proposal being put forward by the applicant, and they're seeking to rezone it to RE2.
So RE2 though in
private
itself,
recreation.
Sorry, RE2, my understanding doesn't allow manufactured home estates. It allows caravans that are associated with a recreation activity, but a manufactured home estate, I was under the impression was through a SEP.
Yes, you're correct there, Councillor Smith. The applicant then could apply under a state environmental planning policy to enable a manufactured home estate to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Madam Mayor, if I could just make some comments in relation to this matter, and again, just reinforcing some of the concerns of Councillor Hogan about the quality that this creates for the community and for development in that area. Again, my understanding is that because it is coming to us under a SEP, it won't need to comply with some of those basics requirements. I could be wrong on that, but some of those just bare minimum requirements that enhance livability in some of these areas. So I will support it going forward. The reason for supporting that is because it will go out on exhibition, and that gives the community an opportunity to have a good look at it and to really see if that's the quality of a new suburb or a new area that we're trying to create. I would hope that the final product would be much better enhanced in terms of some of those qualities that make places great places to live. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. There are no further questions or comments. So Councillor Best, you now will have right of reply. Thank you.
It's Wesley. Get lost. Okay, it's home council. That's Wesley. He's a rescue cat. He doesn't know that. Look, I hear you, Councillor Smith, on that issue around the calibre and quality, and Councillor Hogan, fair call. However, you've only got to visit these communities, as I do, and I have for many, many years. I have not only constituents in them, I have friends in them, and I get welcomed into them, and I have a beer with them from time to time. These communities, they're not your Tukely caravan parks that for more than a decade I worked to try and stop from what happened in that caravan park. Now that caravan park's gone and the building's going up as we speak, and hopefully quality will exist. Those bad old days we've moved well on from. The quality of these facilities is second to none. The community spirit in them are excellent. In fact, I don't know one of the parks up there that you would suggest there was a social question over. So I don't know what our paranoia is about. I know there's some interesting boarding houses that are legacies of yesteryear around our community that we can do a lot better with. But to suggest that on page 98 that Valhalla is an organisation that's, you know, possibly substandard, I mean, that would just be abhorrent to suggest that. You should just take a trip up there on a Thursday, sit down and have a Thursday afternoon barbecue with the locals. And they do regularly do that. And there's a myriad of other parks up there. Councillor Hogan's quite right. There are quite a few. But just because there's quite a few, it doesn't mean there's some standards issue going on. I mean, some built suburbs in this community, whether we like it or not, have got some serious social issues in them, and they're not mobile home parks. So let's not kind of, you know, throw people out with the bathwater here. Quality can exist. You don't have to have, you know, the quarter-acre block, a tile roof, and the, you know, and the jet ski in the backyard with the caravan to have quality, you know. So let's not be a little bit too elitist here, if we can please. And this is a planning proposal, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, councillors. I'll now move the motion as moved by Councillor Best, second by Councillor Holstein. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Best, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Gale, Councillor Greenaway, Councillor Smith, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Burke, Councillor Pillen, Councillor Marquette and Councillor Matthews. All those against? Councillor McGregor, Councillor Hogan. I declare the motion carried. Thank you. Councillor, moving on to item 3.7. I know we have to remove Councillor Hogan. Goodbye. It's in the name of, we've got 3 names here. So who, can I have a mover of the motion? So we've got Holst not moving. Councillor Best is not moving. Oh, Councillor Best will move. Councillor Holstein, you want to second the motion? Councillor Best, if you would like
get to the page number, if I may.
Yeah,
96,
so
isn't it?
173.
Oh, 173. Thanks, Lisa.
173.
I'm scrolling.
Proposal. Doyleson.
173. Now, Chris, can you hear me all right? Chris spoke to me earlier again on this, and he has got quite a reasonable observation, which I'm more than happy to take on board. If I could hand over through you to Chris.
Has that been added?
Chris has got
Sonia? I believe that you already had that through, didn't you?
Chris?
That's correct, Madam Mayor. I'd actually put that through earlier. It's part 7, just noting the proponent's offer to enter into a planning agreement with council that ensures no commencement until suitable alternate grounds and facilities have been found for all the sporting associations currently using the site. That's my addendum, if Councillor Best accepts it.
Yes, just to be added on.
Yes, thank you. Part 7.
Part 7. Great. Okay, Councillor Best, do you want to speak to your motion?
Yes, I will. Just let me reading it. Yes, look, this begins to take the north of our region, our shire, our city. It's one of those big lick programs that can make a defining difference in an area, and we know the clubs are becoming the meeting points, the central points, the go-to points, the breakout points for people in mobile home parks we just talked about, that want to get out and meet friends and bowl and do and be and feel part of the community. And these clubs, particularly in that north pocket, and I'm sure councillors across the rest of the shire in your areas, your clubs are fairly anchor for many in the community, whether they be young sports people or elderly or the diggers on Anzac Day. It is a central point. And this club's worked very, very hard around this. And again, to the staff who have been driving this, and Mr. Cox's department, it's a bit like Mr. Cox evening tonight, Scott, I can see that. But your team has been working hard, Gary, through Scott's department on a range of issues. And this is just another one of them. I mean, the Munmora Master Plan and the structure plan, all those other plans we've talked about, they begin to activate the north. Now, we certainly don't want to lose the reason we came here. Mine subsidence is a key issue in this area, and we have to be mindful of that. I think Darren, Mr. Thornton, the CEO of the club, and the board have worked very hard and well with our staff over many years, I may say yet again, to try and bring forward an opportunity. We know in clubland it's not easy. It's a lot of pressure on businesses these days, and this will give this club an opportunity, I think, to take themselves, you know, well beyond 2020, you know, which we find ourselves in rather interesting circumstances. It is long term as I can see it. I'm not a planner, but my experience would say to me that this is not around the corner tomorrow. This, councillors, you're putting down foundations tonight that will be, I think, you know, the seeds will grow in a decade. Now, some might believe that'll be sooner, but this is big instrument stuff, and who knows what the market's going to look like come 2021, 2025. So I commend the staff report, and I think it's again another good economic driver for our northern pocket, which is so desperately needs those jobs and that support. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Councillor Holstein, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Best is correct. It's not a short term, it is a long term. And I referred to, and I again went on to this site inspection. I know the site well. I also know the importance to the sport groups that have used those privately owned fields and how important they will be for them if they are to be lost. Again, it's a long-term option with all the things that were said with the previous item. There is a lot of time that's going to go by, but the proponent made it quite clear in the report on page 181. And again, if the councillors read the submission that was put in by the club in regard to the public forum, they again mentioned the issue that they offer the ability to enter into a planning agreement with council to ensure that no development will commence until the alternate grounds and facilities have been found for all of those associations currently using the site. And I remind all the councillors, this is a site that's used not just in that ward, but teams come from all over the Central Coast in playing the local teams up there. And it's important that we ensure that land becomes more and more valuable in regard to the need for sports, recreation, for our young people to get out, play sports. And that's not to be lost. I just wanted to ensure that the motion had the addendum to ensure our sporting associations currently using the site are protected, and that any development in the future, having gone through all that process, that's not lost. It's part of the motion, it's on the record, and we ensure that that part of the community is protected.
Thank you, Councillor Holstein. Councillor McGregor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I just want to reiterate what Councillor Holstein was saying there. Now, I believe that there is strategic and site-specific merit to this proposal, but one of the main concerns that I do have is around the impact on the sporting side of things. And I think it's an important point to raise, not just for this specific development, but as other developments such as the upgrade of Leagues Club Field go ahead, we're having a lot of clubs being forced to move, chop and change, going to areas where they wouldn't normally go to, and it is having a significant impact on local club sport. So comment on this specific proposal, but also more broadly, I think it's very important as an organisation that council is very attuned to this, that we are forward planning for this and that we are receptive and working collaboratively to what the clubs are saying about this. I'm sure the applicant and relevant groups will be able to work together on this particular one, but it is an issue across the LGA, and I think it's something that we need to look at more closely into the immediate and the distant future, as we are having some changing conditions here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGregor. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I support the planning proposal going forward, but I was just going to ask the mover and seconder if they would consider just removing part 3 of the motion. So part 3 is where council requests delegation to finalise the LEP. And I will just explain my reasoning. I think with this site in particular, and again, I support the club being able to do some development on their land. But I think what the report does note, and Councillor Best mentioned it, is that there are some issues in that vicinity. So it is an area of mine subsidence. The report highlights that there are some contaminated land issues there that will need some further investigation. It is across the road from the ash dams, and you know, there are various issues around the ash dams that I think need to be taken into consideration with this proposal. And I think because of that complexity, I would really like that not only do our staff review this and provide a recommendation to council for us to adopt, I would like it then to go to the state government for their scrutiny as well, mainly on those issues. I think yeah, it's one of those things that we want to make sure we get right if we allow residential development and encourage it, and I hope that we do. But it is something that I think it is important that we make sure we get right now, so that in 10 or 20 years, there aren't any unforeseen problems. So I think that 2 levels of scrutiny would help assist that and something really good go forward. I'll just ask through you, Madam Mayor, if the mover and the seconder might accept that change.
Councillor Best, are you clear with the change? So she wants to remove 3.
I understand that, Madam Mayor, and as I said before, I'm not a planner, and I've learned to be very careful in these circumstances. So if, with your indulgence, I may, on that question, place a question to Mr. Cox, who authored this report, and to share with we councillors what removing 3 might reflect and what unexpected consequences we might achieve here. May I ask that question to Mr. Cox, Madam Mayor?
Sure. Mr. Cox.
Through you, Councillor Best, the only implication would be that it just may add a time frame for the applicant should it proceed through to past a gateway and then get through community consultation. If it's finally adopted by council, it just means that the plan would be made by the state government. So really, council, the only implication is that it may add another 4 to 6, maybe 2 months. 4 to 6 weeks or 2 months to the plan making process. That's the only implication in terms of the delegation.
Well, I think, Madam Mayor, with that answer, and thank you, Mr. Cox, I think Councillor Smith, your observations are not unfair. I think I can accept that if Councillor Holstein will.
Councillor Holstein, thumbs up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there are, according to the no further questions, or there are no hands. So, Councillor Best, right to reply.
I sense the mood of this that maybe we can save 3 minutes.
Great.
Would that be okay? Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Best. Thank you. Sorry, councillors. My screen just said you're running out of battery. Sorry. It came up. That was, sorry, everybody. Sorry. I think that should be right now. Okay, thank you. Therefore, I will move the motion as moved by Councillor Best and second by Councillor Holstein. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That would be unanimous. Thank you very much. Councillor Hogan, come back. Come back, Councillor Hogan. Thank you. Councillor Hogan is back. Thank you. Councillors, we move on to item 4.1, which is the update on actions response to COVID-19. I note that Councillors Best and Marquette have started. So do I have a mover out of either of you? Councillor Marquette, did you want to move the report? Yes, thank you. Councillor Best, did you? Oh, you can second it, Councillor Best. Councillor Marquette, would you like to question, speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I wanted to just make sure this was discussed tonight. So we have raised this in front of everyone on the podcast. I know a couple of my colleagues like to throw little jabs in there that we talk about this in this same sort of format on Zoom or on Skype. We talk about it with Mr. Murphy 4 o'clock on a Friday, but we're not all available 4 o'clock on a Friday. And the reason that is because some of us run small businesses and some of us are working our bums off, so we don't have to put people, employees, good employees have been with us for longer than a decade out in the gutter, employees that have families. I'm really concerned, Madam Mayor and councillors, I'm concerned that there's small businesses that the Central Coast is going to lose that will never come back again. Personally, our business, my wife and I have been able to work hard. We've been able to change what we do, reinvent the wheel, and we haven't had to get rid of anybody. But as I alluded to some of our colleagues tonight before the meeting, we've got 6 factories here where I am, and there's 4 of them that the businesses could be gone out of. They're literally, they've had to put their employees off. They've had to stop trading with the lockdown measures we've got. So the reason I wanted to raise this tonight is I want everyone in the Central Coast to realise, and I hope it's a consensus throughout all 15 or the 14 that we've got here at the moment, that the moment we can come out of any lockdown measures, we will. Any help we can give small business, enterprise, the Central Coast economy at large, we will give it. We'll do everything we can, because we don't want to, of course, this is a major issue. Of course, lockdown has been necessary, but we're going to come to a point soon where we can ease off surely, and we need to make sure that happens the second we can. We need to make sure that we can try and kickstart these businesses. The sad reality is there'll be some that are gone forever. Good businesses, there's in the industry we're in, there'll be sporting associations that have been around for decades that are gone. They're bankrupt. Because the only type of money they get is sponsorship. Sponsors aren't getting anything out of it at the moment, and their money through the associations, the competitions they run. So there'll be sporting associations that keep our kids physically active, that keep us all physically active, that are gone forever. As what they are as a type of small business, and I'm very concerned that the country's going to look very different, and from our perspective, the Central Coast is going to look very different in 6 months. And I hope we're all on the same page where we can work together and give every bit of support we can to kickstart the Central Coast economy and to try and get everyone back in work. We don't want to have a Central Coast that's got 20% unemployment, and I'm terrified that that's what we might be looking at. So I open the floor to other councillors to hopefully throw something out there in regards to the like and what we can do to try and get the Central Coast moving again ASAP. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Marquette. I keep forgetting to unmute myself. Councillor Holstein.
No.
Did you know?
I'm fine.
You're fine, okay. Councillor Best.
The seconder, yeah. Sorry, you're right.
Well, it's just that Councillor Holstein typed in his name, Councillor Holstein, and so I assumed that was.
Hi, Chris. It's a bit like the Brady Bunch down here. Isn't it?
It is the Brady Bunch.
You know.
My bad.
There's a story about a council. Look, Troy is absolutely correct. If I could put my general manager of Central Coast Group training hat on my day job, this is really, really tough on our kids. This is tough on everybody. This is tough on families. But ladies and gentlemen, I can't begin to share with you how difficult it is on our kids. These kids, they don't have the adult thinking we've got about, life, reasoning, and what it's about. They just want to finish their apprenticeship and go out and do what we did. And when they're stood down, their whole apprenticeship is put on the line. And I get to sit in this dark room and figure it out at night with a few of my staff as to how we're going to explain this to them. So Troy's 110% correct, and he's got staff that, by the sounds of it, his friends, not just his employees. And I've got friends in my operational team that, they're professional friends, but we've had to let a couple of them go, and it's not easy when you let someone go that's worked with you personally for 8 years, and you've got to look at them in the face and say, hey, I've got to pull the bus up and let you off. So we need to get everybody back to work yesterday. We know that, but I unfortunately sat through a Sunday video what came on as we were doing the cabin fever thing. It was the Spanish flu of 1918, and my God, you would not wish that on any of your worst enemies you could possibly consider. What happened to those people when they opened doors too soon, and what they went through was staggering. Now, I know the medical world was very different back then, but when you look at that history, you would never wish that upon anybody in the future, and we're here now in this future. So it's a very, very vexing situation. But look, the tracking app came out yesterday, and I've signed up for it already. So has my wife and all my kids. And I'd like to think that all councillors could sign up to that if they haven't already. And Madam Mayor, it might be a nice mayoral minute for the next round, possibly that could say that we've all signed up to the tracking app, and that we encourage everyone in our community to sign up, because we need about 4 million people to sign up to track. This is about looking after our grandparents. it's looking after our kids, it's getting people back to work sooner. And I know people have got some issues around privacy. Look, you know, compared to having my 88-year-old mother alive next year, I'll give up all my privacy, right? Lost my dad just late last year, saw that effect on her, and I don't think I want to see her face this along with any other senior in our community. So whatever it is we can do, we need to do it. We need to get business back. We need to fast track things. We need to stop being the council that tends to, not just this council, but all councils are fairly good at planning and some more planning. We need to do some doing here, which generates jobs and economic growth, because we're going to have job queues that are going to be real long, real soon.
Great, thanks, Councillor Best. I just want to just say that I thank the staff for the update that we are getting, and I also thank Gary for our regular Friday update. For those out in webcast land, every Friday, I think you've heard a couple of the councillors comment that we get an update from the General Manager via Zoom or Skype at that time, what the council's actually doing to support its entire workforce, but also to support the community. And whilst there are people suffering, and as Councillor Marquette said, small business operators, I'm one of those as well, you know, had to shut my business down too. We know that that all of you are hurting as we are hurting too. But I think it's important at this time to thank the CEO and the leadership team, the ELT, for what they have done in order to keep our community safe and keep certain parts of our business open. And as we like to say, really, we're just doing business in a different way. We are open for business, we're just doing it differently. So I'd like to publicly thank our leadership team for everything that they've done to date. It's been hard, it's been tough. Decisions have had to be made, especially in the early stages when we didn't know exactly how business was going to actually happen, but they've managed to I guess get through that. This community, you know, we know has had drought, fires, floods, now we've had pandemic. So I want to thank everybody in this community that's been able to get through everything, and you know, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. So I believe that we are coming together. I believe we're almost at a plateau where I think this is now the way of the future. What will be normal, who knows? This is probably going to be somewhat normal for some time to come. But like I've been saying to the councillors and to members of the community, is that together, you know, we've got this. We're just getting the job done, and we will continue to get the job done. So thanks everybody for your support over the last 5 or so weeks in, you know, the spirit that we've all shown to actually work together just for the sake of our good community. So thank you, everybody. Is there any other, no more comments? So Councillor Marquette, would you like to close debate?
Madam Mayor, I'll close by saying really quickly that the genesis behind me saying anything in regards to this is the hope, I suppose, that these updates start to talk about, obviously when we can, when the lockdowns are starting to ease, these updates start to talk about what we're doing as an organisation to help the individual, to help the entrepreneur, to help small business, to help everyone, because the greatest gift that anyone can possibly have in this country is a job. And so they can look after their family, they can look after their children. It's really, really important. Fantastic job that everyone in the organisation's been doing at the moment, for councillors up all through staff. I totally agree with what you've said. Well said. I'd like to congratulate them as well. But I can't wait to the time when I'm reading these updates and what we're going to do to get this place moving again, to get the wheels turning. Madam Mayor, there's 3 levels of government in this country. All 3 levels, if there may not have been an option, but all 3 levels have put the economy in a coma, and it's up to all 3 levels to unfortunately pay for the life support. That doesn't just mean financially, that also means in support. So we really need to do everything we can. Any ideas, there can't be a bad idea, because any idea that can get people back in employment on the Central Coast is going to help them socially. It's going to help every part of their life. So I look forward to that as we move forward. Thank you very much for the updates as we get them, and I can't wait to the updates of we get to a point where we can put some real meat on the bone and try to get back to the Australia where we've all got a job, where we can shake hands as we say g'day, and then eventually pop down the pub and have a schooner together as well. That'll be all lovely. I can't wait till we're back to the real Australia. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll now move item 4.1, the update, moved by Councillor Marquette, second by Councillor Best. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That'd be unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 4.2, which is the amendment to the advisory group terms of reference. And I note that Councillor Smith, would you like to move this, Councillor Smith? Yep. Second by Councillor Vincent.
Madam Mayor, I actually want to move an alternate motion,
okay.
So not the one that appears there. I think I did give it to the staff. So the motion that I'll be moving is to actually retain the current requirement that the minutes of the advisory committees do get reported to council. So I'll just wait and see if I've got a seconder.
Councillor Greenaway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So look, I did just want to say I appreciate the staff's intent with this report and recommendation, which was to reduce the number of reports that councillors get in our business paper. I think we all are aware that there are a significant number of reports that come to each meeting. However, the advisory committees do have a role, and part of their role is about transparency and accountability within our organisation, and some of that is reflected in the minutes. Even if it doesn't include a recommendation to council, it provides more information, and councillors have the opportunity to see what those advisory committees are talking about and what they might be discussing. So I would actually like to see those minutes continue to come to council. I do note, and I thank the staff for the information earlier today, where they just reviewed the number of minutes that do come to council, I think since June last year, and it demonstrated that over 80% of those minutes just go straight through the council meeting. So they're adopted en masse, they're not debated, and so when you look at the bigger picture, I don't think it really warrants removing those minutes from the business paper. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Greenaway, a seconder, I'll unmute you.
Go again.
No, you're good.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I just wanted to speak briefly in support of this item, just because it's not just that 80% go through en masse usually, which is helpful to demonstrate that it's not taking up much of the time in the business paper, but having it in the business paper does make sure it comes to the attention of councillors and gives them opportunity to ask questions should they desire to. But also it brings them immediately into the public domain. So anyone in the community who looks at the business papers and sees the minutes can find them easily and can contact their councillor and ask them to ask a question about something if they want to. So I just think as a way of making sure that people have the capacity to participate, and for councillors to be aware of all the other committees and what they're achieving is really helpful. So I'm happy to support this, and I hope all my fellow councillors do too.
Thank you, Councillor Greenaway. Do we have any? I've got. Oh, okay, Councillor Marquette, did you want to speak? No. Any further speakers for or against? No. Councillor Best, sorry, you're off camera. I'm just you're good. Okay, thumbs up. Okay, thumbs up. Okay, sorry. Okay, councillors, therefore, there are no further questions. Councillor Smith, would you like to reply? No, thank you. Councillors, I therefore put the amended motion, or I suppose, sorry. I don't know what that means, Councillor Greenaway. Are you okay? All right. I'll therefore move the motion as moved by Councillor Smith, second by Councillor Greenaway. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Moving on to item 4.3. So it's the reappointment of the Independent Audit Risk and Improvement Committee members and provision of the ARIC annual report. Councillor Smith, are you moving?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I do have just a modified motion that I'd like to move that should be up on the screen.
Yes, so there.
And so I will just point out the difference to councillors to what appeared in their business paper. So it does just change the time period of the extension. So it just makes them 1 year, for the chair, 1 year extension, for one of the other independent members, 2 years, and the third 3 years. And then the other change is the last point in the motion is just requesting a councillor briefing on the Office of Local Government Draft Risk Management and Internal Audit Framework for local councils and the recent review undertaken into Council's Enterprise Risk Management Framework. So I'm moving that way, and if I have a seconder, I will speak to it
We have
briefly.
a second, Councillor Vincent, I see. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I do just want to stress that the changes I have made in no way reflect anything negative. I think the ARIC and the members of ARIC do a very good job, and as Mayor, I attended a couple of their meetings, and although I don't have their technical expertise, I was very confident listening to them interrogate some of the issues that were before them, which is what you want an Audit and Risk Committee to do. So my motion is simply about review of the process is, I believe, good governance. And so having an annual turnover, or sorry, not even turnover, because the members are eligible to apply and be reappointed. So that should be made clear as well. It's just putting in place a process where there is a review each year of one of the positions. And the last point is really just about, I think there is a lot happening in this audit and risk framework. Local government or Office of Local Government had something on exhibition towards the end of last year, and having had a brief look at that, I think there are things in that discussion paper that are worthy of our councillors considering and getting up to speed on. So I commend the motion to the councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent, would you like to speak?
Yeah,
You're fine. We can hear you.
Is that on now, is it?
Yes.
Oh, I got a little message saying I've been unmuted. I was muted a minute ago. So thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, for the amendments. I was curious on where you were coming from when you first said them, but I understand where you're at now. I think my comments are that the current chair and the external members that have been appointed to the committee, I've been impressed with their calibre, and I've been impressed with the input that they've had. And some of the discussions we've had have been fairly robust. And it's clear that from the other organisations they work in and they represent and the other boards that they sit on, they've done considerable work in this area. So I think they add value to the Central Coast Council, and I'm supportive of their reappointment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Best, I think you should be unmuted. Shane's beating me to it.
One, two, Shane. Somebody efficient. Thank you, Shane. Tremendous. And Sonia and all, as I said, as you said, Madam Mayor, in the COVID discussion, we've got fantastic staff. Having said that, I will speak in favour of Councillor Smith's motion. It is now the motion, isn't it? It's not an amendment, is it? It's a motion.
No, the motion.
Look, Mr. Gallatley, Mr. Gordon and Millington, they all are extraordinarily professional people with exemplary track records in this field and sphere of good governance. However, I will make some observations on behalf of my ratepayers, their money, their purse, and our management of that. And this is the trampoline under the $800 million Highwire Act this council performs. This trampoline's got to work. This trampoline can only work with knowledge. And we have just had a debate about reporting committees to council. Well, that's very nice. We've got about 40 odd committees that are costing us $500,000 to run, oodles of staff time. And if you're going to have a committee, you better perform on it if you're going to sit on it, instead of just putting your hands up and getting your mates or something that can give you the numbers and trot yourself onto a committee. I've seen it for decades. That's how it works. But that's not how the committee is actually useful to us. And my point is, Madam Mayor, that this particular committee, in my view, was denied the knowledge around a range of significant economic issues that this council's been facing for quite some time. The accounts, which I prosecuted the argument of many times, the accounts for 18-19 are like, depends on how you argue it, 6 months, 9 months, not late, but they were given an extension. But look, let's stop playing the semantics. That's a horror outcome for an organisation like us to have no accounts and then try and craft a budget when we don't even know what we spent the year before. And in this budget, we're still losing about 22 million bucks. And we're forecasted to lose another $30 million next year. Some of my colleagues, one sitting to my right, says to me, well, to run deficits, no trouble at all. But what happens when there's a rainy day? And we've got one. We've got a tsunami right now. It's called COVID-19. And we've got nothing to be able to support ourselves in as far as discretionary expenditure, because we crafted a budget with absolutely no fat in it for the first budget, which was a $65,000 profit. I mean, who crafts a $65,000 profit in an $800 million budget, if you're not joking? Now, then we run a $21 million loss, and we're forecasting a $33 million loss. Now, with COVID on top of that, who knows, the numbers blow out completely. But we ran, may I have an extension, Madam Mayor, because this is important.
I was about to...
Thank you.
1 minute extension. Councillor Pill and Councillor Gale, all those in favour of a minute extension, please raise your hand. We're voting on the extension. 6, 7. No, sorry, Councillor Best. Okay. On the extension, please raise your hand. 1 minute. So we've got Holstein, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Best, Councillor Gale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You've got your minute. Thank you. All those against?
Thank you for
Carried.
that. Even Mr. Albanese and Mr.
Anyway,
Prime
you're
Minister
running
can
out
do
of your
his.
time.
I know what I'm
Councillor Best.
doing. I understand. The point I wanted to particularly raise was that we have councillors, 2 councillors that sit on this committee and feed information up to Mr. Gallatley, the chairman of the committee. That's what they're meant to do. But none of them, the members of that committee that are representatives sitting in this room tonight, this virtual room tonight, raised the $9 million body hire fiasco that this council's presiding over, which is unlawful, we know that, and it's still sitting on our books, and we didn't do anything before Christmas on it. It's a $9 million ridiculous black hole, putting contractors over employees, and 2 councillors sitting in this room said nothing and did nothing. That's my point. So if you're going to take a role on a committee, you better take it seriously, because the ratepayers do. It's their money and we're losing it. And it's not good enough, councillors.
I have a question before I go to you, Councillor Vincent, if you don't mind. I note that, and I'm not sure who I'd ask the question to, but I know that we have 3 gentlemen on that committee. Was there any reason why there's no, did a woman apply? I mean, do we have any kind of ratio there for balance, gender balance with professionals? Sorry, I know. I should have thought about it earlier.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the appointments were made 3 years ago. It was an expression of interest process. And to be honest, I can't recall what the gender makeup of the applicants were.
Okay, all right, thank you. Councillor Vincent, I'll attempt to unmute you. Okay, you're on.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. It was just mainly a question on Councillor Best's comments, and I thank him for his comments. And there's quite a structure with the committee, and there is a general business time when things can be raised, but when items of significance have gone through the chamber, they do get to the committee. But as a committee member that goes along, I'd ask Councillor Best why, if he's so concerned about these things, why has he never attended one of these committee meetings?
Councillor Best.
Well, that's a really good question, Councillor Vincent. And as the former chair of the Economic and Employment Committee for nearly a decade with Council, and sitting for more than a decade, maybe 15 years on this particular committee before this council came along. I made inquiries to be on the committee, and I can't repeat what I was told.
Thank you. Councillor Greenaway, you have a question?
Yes, just a similar one. I've noticed Councillor Best's comments, and it just occurred to me that I believe he's been on council for something like 20 years. So it's fairly staggering to me that if he's so concerned about an issue that he didn't raise it with one of the members of that committee, get it on the business papers and get it discussed. I mean, for someone with that much experience, it's fairly stunning.
Okay, Councillor Vincent, I noted that you wanted to,
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Through your question, I think maybe to the CEO or maybe to I don't know if I can, Miss Sullivan. I can't remember your title. I'm sorry. As far as I'm aware, the Audit and Risk Committee meeting. That's not the right name, actually. I'll give it the full name. The Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. Other councillors have the ability to attend that meeting, don't they?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, other councillors have the ability to attend the meeting at the invitation of the chair. To the best of my knowledge, the chair has never refused a request to attend the meeting.
Thank you for that. So, Madam Mayor, given that the URIC committee was elected by people on council, and Councillor Best could have nominated himself then, as far as I'm aware, he didn't. We've just had it confirmed that any councillor can come to that meeting when it's on, but the best of my knowledge, Councillor Best has never attended one of those meetings in the last 3 years. So for a councillor who is so concerned, for a councillor who seems to be so judgmental, why wouldn't he take the time to come along to this committee and have some input?
I agree. I found that comment quite astounding. He's had that experience. He knows how they work.
Sorry, Councillor Greenway, we've got Councillor Best has got a point of order.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And my point of order goes to Councillor Greenaway's comments that cast aspersions on myself and my professionalness carrying out my council duties. I want to qualify what she said. I spoke twice to Mr. Gallatley personally on this very issue, and I chose to bring it into the full decision-making chamber, the council, not the committee, and question, as Mr. Murphy will recall, I questioned and I re-questioned in the council chamber on the body hire issue and found that we had received a letter to the mayor and the deputy mayor, but we councillors had not been shown that letter, if you recall that debate. So I've raised it at the highest level and I've raised it with the chairman. So stop playing games. You guys are missing on your watch.
Sorry, Councillor Sundstrom's got a question.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, just a clarification, if we may, a question for Councillor Best. I think I heard him correctly, and he stated that he's seen mates getting mates onto committees for years. It may have been decades. That's how it works, he said. I just want to ask him, has he reported any of these acts of corruption and what happened in each case?
Councillor Best.
Well, look, I was born at an early age, and that was some decades. How long have you got here tonight, folks? I mean, how long can we go on that ridiculous question? Well, hang on. Thank you once again, Councillor Sumption, for your contribution, as always. What I'm referring to is that this council, as is most all councils, stacked with party people. I, along with a couple of other councillors, are independents. The vast majority of you are party people, and you vote along party lines. And you've often sometimes get directions from different people within parties. Well, I'm sorry, I've been here for 25 years. I understand. I don't believe in fairies at the bottom of the garden. I understand the reality. So the council is divvied up behind other doors before it's even hardly formed as to who's going to sit on committees. And don't anyone sit here and deny it, because that's how the game's played. And you all know in your hearts that's exactly how it's played. Parties.
Thanks, Councillor Best. Councillor Greenaway, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Just in relation to that matter of supposed body hire, what year are we talking about there again? And I'm not sure which member of staff can answer that, but the second question maybe a different member of staff would need to answer. Are they aware of any other councillor bringing this to the attention of ARIC, and if ARIC's ever refused to look at it? Because I'm happy if Councillor Best wants to put something to me, I'm quite happy to bring it to the committee. He only has to put it in writing.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Council resolved on the 9th of March this year that the matter regarding body hire would be referred to the next appropriate audit risk and improvement committee, and that meeting is in mid-June is the next meeting.
So what exactly, so just from what was brought up at that meeting, it's just going to be referred to ARIC, or was there some specific item, I guess, that Councillor Best wanted brought up that he's referring to tonight?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Greenaway, it was in relation to a report that had been tabled some time ago, and it was a resolution of council notice in response to a notice of motion.
I remember that, but so what year was the body hire contract? That was back in the previous council, wasn't it? Wyong Council?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it was the previous issue was at Wyong Council.
Thank you.
So sorry, councillors, I'm aware I've now actually had somebody that moved that the motion be put, Councillor Marquette. Sorry, Councillor Best, I've already got a motion to move it. Do you really want a point of order? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, Shane, thank you very much for your advice. The matter that Shane referred to was a matter that was reported to the department and found to be wanting by Wyong Council. But this matter that I raised in the chamber on the 9th of March is $9 million agency hire in the 18-19 accounts of this council. Your council, Councillor Greenaway, our council, not Wyong Council. Wyong Council did the wrong thing and everyone was drawn over the coals for it.
So, Councillor Best,
this is now.
Have you got a point of order? Is that what you're doing now?
Well, the point of order, the staff member has just said that it was Wyong Council. It wasn't when I moved that to go to ARIC. It's about this council, not Wyong Council, Madam Mayor. It's about this council.
Okay, right. So your
that's
point
the
of order.
Point of order is that it's this council. Thank you.
Thank you. And
clarity.
Thank you. Miss Sullivan has acknowledged the fact that she got it wrong.
Thank you, Miss Sullivan.
But the question was when did the question was when the issues were occurring. That was my question to Miss Sullivan.
No, I believe that Councillor Best is talking about this council. I do remember in March, this was about this council. It definitely was because it was brought up. Sorry, I've got a point of order with Councillor Vincent. Sorry, guys, and then I've got Councillor Marquette. I know all you've got. He wants to move it, so I'm just. He wants to put a motion. Go, Councillor Vincent. Call is yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My point of order is I did ask Councillor Best a direct question on why he hadn't attended any of the ARIC meetings. And while he was on the topic of parties, I just wanted Councillor Best to confirm or deny if he was ever involved with or a major funder of the Save Tug Relax Party.
There's no answer to that. Thanks, Councillor Vincent. So it's not actually a point of order though. Sorry. I know you've asked a question and Councillor Best is not going to answer that question. So he shall remain silent. So Councillor Marquette has asked the motion be put. Sorry, Councillor Gale. Are you?
Seconding motion be put.
Okay, Councillor Gale is seconding the motion be put. All those in favour that the motion be put, please raise your hand. Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Best, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Gale, Councillor Smith, Councillor Greenaway, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Burke, Councillor Pillen, Councillor Marquette, Hogan, Vincent, and myself, Councillor Matthews. All those against, Councillor McLaughlin. Therefore, I declare the motion carried. We're now going to put the motion. Do we need? Oh, I'm confused as to who moved it. Oh, okay. Councillor Smith, did you want to write a reply?
Madam Mayor, look, in one sentence, I think the debate we've just had illustrates why we need ARIC in terms of a professional and impartial and dispassionate group of very well qualified people that can review some of the normal processes and functions of our council. So I commend the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Therefore, councillors, I'll move the motion is moved by, sorry, Councillor Smith and Councillor Vincent. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Burke, are you? Okay, so it would appear to be Councillor McGregor, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Best, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Gale, Councillor Greenaway, Councillor Smith, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Pillen, Councillor Muckwet, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Vincent. All those against? Councillor Burke. I declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. I think it's 4.6. Yeah, councillors, moving on to item 4.6, which I believe Councillor Gale, the investment report. Would you like to move it, Councillor Gale?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I also
do we have a seconder? Councillor Pillen. Yes, Councillor Gale. You want to add?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've sent through an amendment. The amendment being that the CEO investigate opportunities for developer contributions and water and sewer contributions to be borrowed within council for operational matters. And then if I can ask a question, please, through you, Madam Mayor, to our CEO, Mr. Gary Murphy. Mr. Murphy, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, was it foreseeable to see a decrease in over 15 million in our investment portfolio from February to March 2020 and an over 10 million decrease in our transactional accounts and cash at hand? Was that foreseeable prior to the outbreak?
Am I unmuted? Yep. Okay. Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Gale, I think no one really could have foreseen this COVID pandemic coming. So I think it would be a brave person to say that that they did. I think there's been a lot of discussion around the unprecedented nature of it and the unforeseen circumstances on investments. So I think the short answer is no, I don't think anyone could have foreseen this.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Madam Mayor, I'd like to speak to that. Just with regards to, as you've mentioned yourself, Madam Mayor, the challenging times that we have at the moment and will have ahead of us. I think during these extraordinary times with COVID-19, we as a board need to think collectively and to think boldly and creatively and to protect and care for our Central Coast residents. I think giving the CEO an opportunity to investigate into borrowing funds within council is prudent at this time during this pandemic, and on those grounds I support the motion. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pillen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I don't need to speak any further to that. Councillor Gale's covered it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Best.
Could I ask through you to Mr. Murphy, Gary, you will recall at the strategic planning workshop we got one day of and events overtook everything, floods to pestilence. I raised in there other sources of income to the business, which Councillor McGregor's now turned into his own motion, but we'll get to that. I raised the $200 million that sits in the funds that are there for future investment, right? The 94 contributions. Now, I asked that a few months ago. I'm wondering, what is your team now considered around that concept of using some of those funds? Because I hear there's some potential substantial borrowings being considered here, and I don't want to put the ratepayers to any unnecessary burden other than the $65 million we're already losing in this term of council.
Can you unmute me? Yep, okay. Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Best, it is correct that you raised that at the planning meeting that was curtailed. In relation to developer contributions, I do note that the Minister for Planning has announced a review into developer contributions, and so that work is underway at the moment. And similarly, the Mayor's letter of advocacy to the Minister for Local Government requested local government to be given some flexibility in relation to accessing restricted funds. I might just ask our acting CFO, Mr. Oldfield, if he would like to add anything further in relation to some of the investigations that have been done to date in relation to, I guess, financial requirements and borrowings.
I have a supplementary, Gary, after this answer. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Gary. Just further to your comments, council in the legacy, the former Legacy Wyong Council undertook some interfund borrowings in the past. It's a concept that we've tried before, and it's definitely on the table for what we're looking to do.
I hear what you're saying. With the greatest of respect, we're not accountants. I do have to run a balance sheet and a P&L each month, but I think some of my colleagues don't. So could you just explain that in a more ratepayer understanding way without being condescending to everybody in the room?
No problem.
That's me being condescending, not you, sorry.
Essentially, think of them as buckets. We're taking funds from one bucket and just moving it to another for a period of time, paying interest between those buckets to ensure that we can have liquidity across all those areas. So sometimes there'll be an area which has surplus funds. Interfund borrowing is just a mechanism where we can borrow internally as opposed to going externally.
We were able to achieve that at Wyong.
Correct.
There is around $200 million in the 94s, I understand. Just under 200, I think, last time I looked. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's some talk of possibly, I think you're not technically borrowing. You're going to re-establish a $50 million line of credit with more humane interest rates.
Correct. Interest are at an all-time low.
So we get nothing for our money like most people in the bank. So we could, if the minister, with the minister's concurrence, Gary, we could tap into that 200 million. We have to be careful because it's intergenerational money, but we're in a monster time for bottom line here and for getting this council, geared up and re-going, because we are the economic underpinner of this region with the nearly $1 billion a year budget. We are by a country mile the driver of this region in an economic sense. So the better and the faster we get out of the hole, everything comes with us, as Councillor Marquette said before. We've got to get people back into work. So how far away is an answer on the 200 million, Gary, do you think? Or have you got a supplementary? You've got any correspondence you can share with us? Anybody telling us good things or bad things? Do we get Mr. Crouch to hop in and help? What do we need to do, Gary?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Best, part of the package, the $395 million package, there was also a funding opportunity through Treasury Corp as well. So that's something else that the team is looking at. But in terms of timeframes, I'm not sure if Mr. Oldfield can give an indicative timeframe, but I guess it's like all of these things. And as you mentioned earlier with JobKeeper and JobSeeker, we're reliant on third parties to get us the information in a timely manner.
Okay, Councillor McGregor.
Is that on now?
Yep.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'd like to speak against the amendment to the staff recommendation. I've got serious and grave concerns about this. It's just an example of robbing Peter to pay Paul. We have an infrastructure backlog on the Central Coast. Now, these contributions and things like that are to pay for footpaths, for parks, for roads, for things like that. Basically, what the councillors are trying to do here in changing the staff recommendation are trying to reallocate those funds, so they're just playing with other people's money. And the reality is that once those developer funds go away, it's going to be very hard to put them back in. So I appreciate the intent, but I do not agree with the method. The method is just sheer economic vandalism, which is what we see time and time again from these people. It's an abusive process and it's completely unnecessary. So if the councillors are interested in pursuing this kind of endeavour, the appropriate way to do it would be through a notice of motion or through working collaboratively with staff in getting this through the appropriate channels. I mean, these are restricted funds for a reason. There's legislative requirements around what we can and can't do with them and the ways that we can engage with them. So whilst I appreciate that there is an intent to use some of this fund to pay things like wages and the like, the reality is that these are long-term investments which our community are expecting, which developers in the industry have gone through with their developments, knowing that they have to pay these funds for various community infrastructure projects like the parks and footpaths that we're talking about. And now we're talking about taking that away. So one of the most important things with coming through COVID and getting out of it is going to be what the Central Coast is going to look like after it, what our organisation as council is going to look like, and what kind of a society and economy that we're going to build. Now, we need to have flexibility around that, but at the same time, we also need to be careful that the decisions that we make now for a short-term gain don't end up with long-term pain. So I've got serious concern about this. This is a multi-million-dollar decision being made on a whim with a staff recommendation that's being hijacked, to use the kind of language that we hear all the time. So I don't think that we're in a position to make this kind of determination now. Quite frankly, it could even be illegal at this point in time. And it would just be dangerous to do so. So if these are ideas that a majority of councillors wish to pursue, they need to do it the right way and they need to do it appropriately. And this is not the way to do it. We're supposed to be talking about our investments here. We're supposed to be talking about that side of things. And you've got people trying to hijack this and make a huge long-term change to the way that this organisation operates, and the kind of changes that we're looking at here are not appropriate to be made at this time. It needs to be done collaboratively. It needs to be done with the right information, and most importantly, it needs to be done legally. So I cannot support this amendment to the staff report, and I would encourage my fellow councillors to also vote against it. If these are issues that wish to be pursued, they need to be done in a different manner and they need to be done in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. More a question. So I do note that the suggestion is to investigate it, but I did also note that the New South Wales Auditor General has just released their audit of local government, and I think they highlighted this as one of the serious concerns in terms of some councils. I also note that some fairly recently media, although it was pre-COVID-19, was also talking about other councils being investigated for this. So my question is, has there been a relaxation due to COVID-19 of this mechanism? And secondly, I suppose if it does proceed, I guess this is the kind of thing that I would like to see us just make sure that ARIC has some line of sight on. So more the question is, has the government relaxed this kind of mechanism?
Through you, Madam Mayor. At this stage, unable to confirm whether it's been relaxed or tightened. It's all still part of the investigation.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Vincent?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm trying to work out how to get on the speaking list. I've sent out some text. Raise your hand and use that, or the chat button. I'll try and send you a direct chat. Look, I just wanted to say I concur with what Councillor McGregor's saying. Any changes like this shouldn't be done on the run. They should be in a timely and structured manner. And I really think just modifying things on the run like that without due consideration and is not the way to do it. I apologise for entering the meeting halfway through. I had work commitments that I had to finish and then come along. So I apologise if I've missed something, but a question through you, Madam Mayor, to the CEO. I heard Councillor Best mention about a loan and the size of the loan that the council may be accessing. I've heard about that, but has that been put on the public record tonight? Or is that on the public record?
It was item 4.5, but
I had a look back through the business paper on it.
Yeah, item 4.5, and it went through en masse.
All right, thank you for that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just checking the chat. Are there any further speakers on this? Question, Councillor Best, can you not use the chat either?
No, can't get. I've got all these lovely faces here. These lovely, lovely people, my friends.
Right.
A question through you to Mr. Murphy, Gary. We've heard from some of my colleagues and comrades, and they've flagged some issues around process and transparency and all those lovely words we use here. And I'm looking at the amendment or the amended motion, and it does say that the Chief Executive Officer investigate opportunities for developer contributions, water and sewage contributions to be borrowed within council for operational matters. So Gary, can you tell me, you're being asked that question by the board, the council, and as a professional CEO, would you just run me through what rigor you would put around reporting to us and what options, not so many options, but just what you would give us, and then the process from there before we would do this, plus a ministerial sign-off, I would imagine. So could you just walk us through this? Because some are suggesting that we're just going to do this tonight and no one's going to see it happening. I'm not sure that's actually what we're doing.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Best, I think you've outlined part of the process. Certainly my reading of the proposed recommendation is opportunities would be investigated, and then certainly my intention would be to report back to council the outcome of those investigations, including whether there were any legal or any other impediments, as well as the consequences. I think there's also the idea of quantum. There's no quantum measured there as to what that might be. So there's a whole range of issues that would have to be undertaken as part of that investigation.
So you'd be giving us knowledge, options, and possible ways to work within the business without having to go and debt up the business from the outside. That the kinds of big lick opportunities that are coming out of Councillor Gale's and Pillen's motion, is it not?
Councillor Best, I think, through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Best, I think, yes, it's, I'm not taking the draft recommendation to be an action in the sense that council will immediately go ahead and do that.
It's knowledge. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Holstein is next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you?
I can hear you. Oh, who muted you? I unmuted you. Now you.
Okay, get me now?
That's it. Yes.
Loving this system. Yeah, look, not a problem. I did understand Councillor McGregor's concern, but when you look back to the motion, the investigation of the opportunities, Councillor Best asked the question that I wanted of Mr. Murphy. It is not a commitment. It is not a direction. The circumstances we currently find ourselves in the council, we should be investigating all opportunities. And I know Councillor McGregor talked about putting up notices of motion, but I've been a critic of a lot of our notices of motion, which seem to be 15, 16, 17, 20 parts long, not necessarily action items. So while I understand, yeah, a notice of motion, if we could ever get them right, might be a way of taking it. I don't see any difficulty with the motion that's been put up. I do clearly see that it is an investigation of opportunities and unusual circumstances that we currently find ourselves in. Yeah, let's open to it. It's not a commitment to anything. And I would expect the professional officers, Mr. Murphy and his team, to come back with what is possible, what is not. And it may well just not be possible. But we do need to look in these unusual circumstances of what opportunities may exist. It is not a commitment to these. It's an investigation to look at the opportunities. Councillors, I think it'd be remiss of us if we weren't to look at every opportunity that may come to us, as the financial impact to this council is going to be huge.
Thank you. Councillor Hogan, you have a question or speaking? Oh, hang on. That's it.
I did it myself. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, to me, this amendment, somewhere along the line, we talk about having faith in our staff. Well, why aren't we having faith in the acting CFO? One of the things that people have said here, if you take away the developer contributions and the water and sewer contributions, and we put it to operational matters, so how do we actually build anything? So we give it to the staff, however, we don't give them the playground to build.
Maybe to move forward, we have an item 3, which is that CEO report back.
So, okay, so Gary, you're saying to move forward on that. And I agree. However, I think maybe it's more of a collective report. That's one part of a very big picture that I'm sure the acting CFO Oldfield is looking into. I don't think it's just one part of it. And certainly we haven't even tipped the iceberg on the financial impacts from COVID. So, yeah, that's just my thoughts on the whole thing.
I think the CEO just added a third, did he? That council request.
He did. Council requests the CEO to provide a further report. Keep going, Gary, you're doing well.
So, Councillor Gale. Okay, sorry. I'll go back to Councillor McGregor. You've got a point of order. Oh, I'll give up the buttons. Go. Sorry.
The point of order is that 4.6 is supposed to be about the investment report for February and March 2020. And now we're seeking reports and additional information, and we're trying to change the entire financial organisation of this of council. The points 2 and 3 should be part of a separate. They should be what do you call it? A motion, an urgency motion or something like that. They should not be part of point 4 investment report 4.6. They're not related in any way, shape, or form.
Councillor McGregor, I will put you over to the CEO. We did have a similar conversation. Sorry, Mr. Murphy, what's your opinion?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it may have perhaps been more appropriate under 4.5, which was related to the borrowings. However, if it is simply calling for a further report in relation to opportunities, I don't think that that's going to cause too many issues. It probably, I agree with Councillor McGregor, probably would be neater with item 4.5, but that has been adopted already.
Okay, Councillor Sundstrom.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the CEO, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Murphy, I would assume that council staff are already doing everything they can to investigate different ways of getting through this crisis. Do you actually need a resolution along the lines of point 2 to investigate those possibilities?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Sundstrom, I suppose, and Councillor Gale can speak to it if she wishes. I think Councillor Gale is being quite specific about a particular opportunity and making that, I guess, intent known, not just to the staff, but to the councillors as a whole. I don't believe that Councillor Gale is aware of what all of the staff are potentially doing. So I wouldn't say that the motion is superfluous. I think it certainly provides some direction, if adopted, some direction to the staff as to where they could focus their attention.
Yeah, supplementary, if I may. I accept all of that. I accept all of that and the spirit in which it's said. But to be precise and to the point, do you need a direction such as this to enable you to look at those options? Or is it something you could do without a direction? Is it within your delegations to investigate a matter such as this?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Sundstrom, certainly carrying out investigations would not necessarily need a resolution of the council. However, some of the enactment of some of those investigations, potentially yes, depending on I guess the outcome of that, as in response to Councillor Best's question earlier on, some may require ministerial approval, and we would certainly want to get clear direction from the council if we were going to go down that line.
Thank you.
Okay, councillors, there are no further questions. I'll have to go back to Councillor Gale. There has been a point 3 added.
Yes, no, I'm happy with that, Madam Mayor. As it continued to roll out, I would have added that myself had I had the opportunity. Okay.
So there are no further hands or questions according to this. So therefore, I'll give you right a reply.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, we are the largest council board, the third largest council board in New South Wales, I believe the 6th largest in Australia. We're in the middle of a pandemic. The intent of this motion of the amendment was simply to give our CEO greater flexibility and to support our CEO in being creative and seeing if we can come up with solutions to the economic crisis that is just around the corner and that we're feeling currently. I support the motion and I encourage all my fellow councillors to do the same. Again, the key word there is to investigate and a report come back to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, I'll now move the motion as moved. I will now put the motion as moved by Councillor Gale, second by Councillor Pillen. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Best, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Gale, Councillor McLaughlin, are you? Sorry, yeah, it's hard because you're up or down. Sorry, your hand. Thank you. Up. Councillor Burke, Councillor Pillen, Councillor Marquette, Councillor Smith, all those against. Councillor McGregor, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Greenway, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Vincent. That's a tie. Therefore, casting vote, I declare the motion lost. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 5.1. Shane. Thank you, Councillor Best. Item 5.1, the update on notice of motion of protection of Porters Creek wetland. I believe Councillor Smith, you have a change to that?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I did circulate a motion to all councillors this afternoon and the staff have it. So I'll just get that put up on the screen and check if I have a seconder.
Councillor McGregor.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, I think a lot of the conversation tonight has been about the impact of COVID-19 and particularly the economic impact, the predicted issues in terms of unemployment. So this motion is about the protection of Porters Creek wetland, but I think what the report highlighted is that there are some complexities in the processes that we need to go through, and that although this has been on our books for, quite frankly, a couple of years now, for a range of reasons, it hasn't been progressed as quickly or as much as we would have hoped. So similar to this, I think that what that says is that we need a broader strategic view of that area, because staff are highlighting that there are some complexity in terms of boundaries, in terms of other things that might be happening in that region. So what this motion seeks to do is take that forward, but also take forward that broader strategic view of the area. It really reinforces existing resolutions of council. So firstly, the resolution to protect Porters Creek wetland, and a budget was allocated to do that. So again, it reinforces that aspect. It also reinforces a previous resolution of council, which is over 12 months old now, in terms of allocating some funds to employment generating activities. So again, I stress for a range of reasons, those things have not progressed as quickly as we would like. So what this motion seeks to do is form a working group that will be able to take those things forward, especially in this time when we know COVID-19 will have a significant impact. So the motion will seek to do that. It will form a working group consisting of the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor and the Wyong Ward councillors, because these things are happening in that ward, but it will then call on appropriate staff and agencies to provide advice to that working group as it goes forward. The CEO, of course, would be a part of that. And the sorry, now I've lost my train of thought a little bit. But the so that is to take that forward. Really, I'll leave it there. I commend it to our councillors. I think, you know, councillors have talked about we need to do anything, we need to get going, we need to address some of the concerns, and certainly this is a motion that I think will assist in moving us forward in a very timely manner. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor McGregor, a seconder.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, this is a very important resolution for this council to make, particularly in these times. The Porters Creek wetland is one of our most important natural resources in the northern region. It's extremely important for our water resources. It's a very important ecological area. I'm also particularly excited about the prospects of moving forward with some of the employment lands in the surrounding area, although there are quite noteworthy constraints around some of the sites there. There's also a lot of positive work that can be done. I note that staff are already conducting some work in some of the preliminary biodiversity studies and the like, but we need to really make sure that this is a priority of not only this council moving forward, but the next council as well, to develop the employment lands and also to protect the environmentally sensitive lands. These things are not mutually exclusive. They can be done together and they should be done together. And it should be the dual focus of this council and other councils going forward to protect our environment, but also to provide employment and opportunity for our people. And this is a perfect example of how we can do that. So I think the working group, should it go ahead, will be collegiate and collaborative and can work together to get some really good outcomes for the area. I think it's important the steps that were taken prior to this in budgeting for this and the former resolutions that went through. But given the COVID situation and other issues, we need to move forward on this as quickly as we can. So I hope that this resolution is successful, and I entrust that in the event that it is, that there are some extremely good positive things that can happen for the Central Coast with this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Marquette.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I've just got some questions to staff, if I may, just in regards to the actual report. The first would be on page 243, paragraph 4 to be precise. It notes there's going to be some issue in regards to existing vegetation management plans, and these may need to be excluded. Within this, are we talking about the runway and what they've needed to do over many, many decades to keep the actual airport viable and safe? Is that the vegetation we're talking about?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Marquette, it's just identified the complexity of the project and the fact that moving forward, we need to identify, you know, what the vegetation is we're dealing with. That was the intent of the paragraph when we were preparing this report, basically saying that a lot of these items in the resolution can't be dealt with in isolation, and it needs a holistic review in order to get the desired outcome that council seeks with that resolution.
And from the wording you've got there, may need to be excluded. So there might be, as this thing moves forward, from what we're reading in the Never, there may be a need for important items such as trimming trees so planes don't smash into them. They may need to be excluded from this particular management plan.
Through you, Madam Mayor, Councillor Marquette, I'm just reading the paragraph itself now. What that actually refers to, Councillor Marquette, there are some older development consents in that area, and there were some agreements and vegetation management plans put in place. They need to be reviewed to have consideration of what's sought with the council resolution now. That's what that refers to. It doesn't specifically relate to any vegetation that relates to the safety of the airport. It's purely based on what existing management plans are in place and what offsets have been agreed to in the past, making sure that we don't disregard those, but they need to be considered in any conservation agreement going forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cox. Just another question. On page 244, it does mention, because of the complexity that you just alluded to as well, it's going to be too much for existing staff and we're going to engage a consultant. I was just wondering, moving down from that on 245, it now says the cost estimate is between 200 to 350. Does that include that consultant cost? The reason I ask is because last time we discussed this, I think I asked a question of yourself, Mr. Cox, in the chamber, and I think it was noted that this is probably going to cost somewhere around 250,000. It might have even been in the report on the night. So we're now saying between 2 and 350. Is the consultant included in that? Because the estimated cost hasn't gone up by much.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the cost closer to 350 would include the engagement of a consultant.
350, thank you very much. Okay, so and then when you move down, obviously what that says there, that the table notes that let's call it 350. That 350 is going to get us to the application stage we've applied. Then there's a notation on page 248 that says there's a remaining 345,000, which would be for future establishment of the agreement, of the conservation agreement. So the way I read that is that we're going to spend with a consultant that your staff need 350,000 to get the application. Then we're going to spend another 345,000 to get this thing up and running. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, my understanding of the additional 350,000, Councillor Marquette, was the fact that there was 100,000 already put towards the project, which has been identified in the draft budget for next year. The intent of mentioning that other 350,000, that's the remainder of the levy savings from the exemption applied by the state government. I believe the intention of that is that those funds could be put towards to cover the cost of the project, which we've identified between 200 to 350,000.
So the 345 mentioned, Mr. Cox, through you, Madam Mayor, on page 248, that 345,000, which is remaining for future establishment, that is not additional to the 350,000 to get the application. That's part of, because it reads like it's additional to.
Yeah, but through you, Madam Mayor, that's not my understanding of it, but I'm happy to take that on further notice and clarify that if you like.
If you could. Yep. Thank you, Mr. Cox, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, there are no further. Sorry, Councillor Greenaway, my apologies. You should. I'm not touching it. My hands are up. Should be right now. No, you're not.
Now I'm working, I think.
Yes, you are.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. It's really funny, some of the things that have been said tonight that just seem like this could get up as a unanimous motion. We had Councillor Best earlier on saying we have significant unemployment issues heading our way. Then we had Councillor Marquette saying he hoped that we didn't see 20% unemployment on the Central Coast. And then he went on to say the greatest gift anyone could have in this country is a job. And I thought, wow, maybe the Deputy Mayor's already had discussions with them because they sound so on board. So I hope I've read the room properly, because this is a really important motion. We have had councillors committed to development of some of the area around the WES to try to get employment on the coast. And given the acknowledgement tonight by some of the councillors who don't normally vote in favour of the WES, that there are significant unemployment issues heading our way, and that the greatest gift anyone could have in this country is a job. I just really do hope that we get a unanimous motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pillen? am I the one who's having?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I do have to highlight, I spoke about this in the briefing today, just to clarify, whilst I'm very supportive of looking after our waterways and the impact that this will have on the Tuggerah Lakes. And I was pleased to hear that there was funding allocated, being recommitted from savings from the emergency services. It's a red flag to me. This Deputy Mayor's, I can't see it, it's not in front of me at the moment, but the names, the ward councillors, look, let's be truthful, the people you've got on there, Madam Mayor, no disrespect to anyone, Mayor, Deputy Mayor and the ward councillors generally, yes, have been supportive and have gone against the airport. I need to flag that I do feel this is possibly a sterilisation of the airport, which I would hate to see. The people that you're speaking about, the councillors that have been pro-employment, yes, the airport, when we came to council, it was the #1 project-ready, shovel-ready project to create employment and to support tourism and business here. So I'm going to have to flag, that's a red flag to me, so I'll be voting against it. And yes, I'm very supportive of looking after the waterways up there in the environment, looking for jobs in the area, but it's just a massive warning to me when you look at who you're putting on that. So I'll be voting against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent. You should be right, Councillor Vincent.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm stunned to hear some councillors talking against job creation activities here, and I think Councillor Greenaway just outlined it very well. Congratulations, Councillor Greenaway. And I think to have the ward councillors in there in the WES who know that area, in there looking for jobs, trying to create jobs in our local area is exactly what we need. Now, there's reports out from the previous Wyong Council which said that the WES is the greatest employment generating activity that this council could do. No, it wasn't this council then, it was Wyong Shire Council. And whilst there was an airport and there was we were looking to have jet aircrafts fly over Warnervale and Wadalba, Camel, areas like that. Take just the airport bit aside. If we just look at jobs and what was the highest ability to create jobs, it is the WES. So if councillors are standing there at the moment trying to talk against job creation in the WES, I'm just stunned. I'm obviously supportive of this. We need to move forward on it. We need to get it done. And to have the ward councillors in that area that know the area, that are in there working hard, and obviously their constituents have voted for them and want them to do this, to have councillors outside that ward trying to tell these councillors that they're not interested in jobs for the community and try to water down what they're doing, I'm just astounded, Madam Mayor, but I'm very supportive of this.
Thank you, Councillor Vincent. Are there any further questions or comments? No, I see no hands. Councillor Smith, I give you your right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I guess just in response to some of the debate, I would just highlight for the councillors that this motion is not about the airport. It's not trying to impact on the operation of the Aero Club. You know, that is a separate issue, and that is something that council as a whole will need to consider going forward. It really is about the complexity of Porters Creek wetland and generating and creating jobs in the Warnervale area. I did also just want to briefly comment on, I can understand some councillors looking at the cost of the process in protecting Porters Creek wetland, but I guess one of the things, and you know, I'll talk in ecological terms and the importance of wetlands. We know that the health of Tuggerah Lakes is an important issue for our community. The cost of protecting Porters Creek wetlands and the fact that it performs a function in ensuring that Tuggerah Lakes is healthy is cheap compared to allowing Porters Creek wetland to degrade and then having to invest over 10, 20, 50 years to try and maintain water quality, stop erosion, stop the lake silting up. So it really, you know, you do need to take a broader view and look at where the best investment is. So councillors, I commend the motion to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I will now move the motion as put by Councillor Smith and Councillor McGregor. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor McGregor, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Greenaway, Councillor Burke, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Vincent, Councillor Smith. All those against? Councillor Best, Councillor Gale, Councillor Pillen, Councillor Marquette, Councillor McLaughlin. I declare the motion carried. Thank you, councillors. The next one is deferred item notice of motion, Gosford Waterfront Marina. I did send through. Oh, Councillor Vincent, you want a division? There's only one person that's calling for it. Sorry, Councillor Vincent. We need 2 people and you're not standing. Oh, Councillor McGregor, really? Well, we're not standing. We can't stand because you can't be seen. So now we're going to retake the vote for the last one. So all those in favour, we're back to item, sorry, councillors, item 5.1. All those in favour, please again raise your hands. Councillor McGregor, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Greenaway, Councillor Burke, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Vincent, Councillor Smith, Councillor Matthews. All those against? Councillor Best, Councillor Gale, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Pillen, Councillor Marquette. The vote is still lost and the vote is carried. Thank you for that division, Councillor Vincent. Item 7.1, notice of motion. I called it. I have an amended motion. I'm waiting. Is that the amended? Sorry, trying to. Is that the amended? I've got no. Sorry, council. Right, so that's the amendment. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? The amended motion? Councillor Mertens. I don't wish to talk to it. I think it's self-explanatory. Councillor Mertens, do you wish to speak to it? Sorry, I'll unmute you. Oh, I'm not unmuting. I give up. Sorry, every time I unmute, somebody mutes you back on. My apologies. Councillor Mertens.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for moving what I think are some sensible amendments there. I note the tenacity with which Councillor McLaughlin is following this issue. Thankfully, this time he didn't refer to Gosford as a ghetto, so I think that's a pleasant move forward for this one. While I am speaking in favour of this and I will support this, I do regret the time that will be spent by staff doing this report. As Councillor Holstein and other people who are aware of this issue have been around for a while, will know that this has been a former and discredited plan for Gosford. This is one that the state government's rejected. It's one that the former Gosford councillors rejected. And it's one that the community rejected wholeheartedly, mainly because they didn't want to turn the Gosford waterfront into the Gold Coast or something like that. So while I am disappointed that we will be spending some staff time on this, I do apologise for that, staff. But I do want this matter put to bed. I thought it was put to bed previously when the former state government canned it. I thought it was put to bed when the former Gosford Council put it to bed. And now that we do have the government architect's new plan for Gosford, which doesn't make mention of any of these activities, I am pleased that hopefully this matter will finally be gone. We do not want finger wharves. We do not want the kind of development that was put forward in that discredited plan. We do have a new plan for Gosford. We've got a park that's moving forward on Leagues Club Field. That's powering along now, and we're all excited to see what that looks like. That doesn't need to be inhibiting views by putting finger wharves and marinas in that way. There are other things we can be doing. We've got a great plan for that, and I am looking forward to that moving forward. But it doesn't involve dredging up the past. No pun intended. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Holstein.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Can I just clarify? You've got 3 parts to that motion. Is that it, or does it go down further?
That's it.
Oh no, I couldn't see the bottom part of it there. I need to get rid of the chat box. Hang on. Jeez. Look, I do need to say something because, as has been mentioned, for 30 years, nearly is now that we've been around, and there's been lots and lots of projects I've been very proud of that we've had an involvement with councillors of all political persuasions to move things forward, from surf club renewals to leisure centres to stadiums to that. I got to say the one biggest disappointment has been the Gosford waterfront, what opportunities could have come from it. And I don't disagree with Councillor Mertens. Plans to reinvigorate the waterfront and opportunity exist, and then we get proposals that come up with finger wharfs that were just totally and utterly ridiculous. There has been issues in regard around the fast ferry that, yes, that was going to be the way of the future, and then they were rubbed out, that they weren't going to be environmentally or to the benefit of the Brisbane water with proposals. These proposals have come forward. Yes, they've been refused by governments. Yes, they've been refused by previous councils, and very much so, the community has wanted to be able to see something happen at the Gosford waterfront. But the issue has always been, who's going to pay for it? How are we going to get the money? So then the developers have pushed that they want a certain level of development to come out of it. Usually that's been, in most instances, to the compromise of having an outcome that would be acceptable to everybody. It's been one of the biggest disappointments I've had. Martin Luther King said, we must accept infinite disappointment, but never lose infinite hope. I still have hope that we can do something at the Gosford waterfront. I still have hope that we can get something that's going to be acceptable, not only to government, to local, to state, but definitely to the community. I commend that we're trying to move forward. I do understand Councillor McLaughlin's intent there. I have no problems with what the Mayor's put up. I just wonder whether we are going to be able to get the necessary support, because if you're going to put any development down there in relation to the Gosford waterfront, government's going to have to come forward with money, or you're then going to go back to the developer and say, well, what are you going to put down there that'll justify that expense? There is still hope that something can happen. I hope whatever we move with here tonight, councillors, we've got to go back, we've got to look at it, and we've got to be realistic in what can happen.
Thank you, Councillor Holstein. Councillor Marquette, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Madam Mayor, I wanted to ask the original author, Councillor McLaughlin, his opinion on this amendment, and if it's going to achieve what he was trying to set out to achieve at the start, because I'm very supportive, and I'd like to pay homage to him in this regard. I think he's being brave. Yes, he used the word ghetto. Well, it's a little bit of honesty. Let's be honest. If Martin Luther King was still here and he drove down the M1, he wouldn't stay in Gosford. He'd probably go up to Newcastle and stay in Honeysuckle. That's because we've done nothing. 30 years. Just because people have made mistakes, guys, 20, 30, 15 years ago doesn't mean we should all sit our bums in a big bucket of quicksand. Well done, Councillor McLaughlin. Can you please tell me what you think of this amendment?
I'm happy to see anything go forward. You know, if that's what the Mayor wants to put up, and it's on the agenda. I just want it on the agenda to try and move forward. So yeah, I think we can dwell on past failures, or we can look to the future. That's our choices. So, you know, whilst I'd like to see my name up there, it doesn't matter. Let's just get on with it and see what we can bring forward.
Thank you. Councillor Burke. We can't hear you, just a sec. You are unmuted, but we can't hear you at all.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yep.
Good. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you. Over the years, I've been involved with the harbour area of Gosford, and I think you have to say over the last 20 to 30 years, it's been the vocal minority that have stopped any progress in the Gosford area. We've had great opportunities years ago, especially with Lend-Lease, who were going to do a major thing. But after about 4 or 5 years, Lend-Lease, and they dropped off because of the vocal minority that stopped things. It's about time we got moving and did something on the waterfront. So I recommend the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further speakers? Just no. Okay. Right of reply? No, I don't believe I need a right of reply. I think it's all been said. So therefore, I'll move the motion as moved by myself, second by Councillor Mertens. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Well done.
Okay, so 7.5, councillors, the last item of business tonight is the establishment of the Social Impact Task Force in the name of Smith and Hogan. So, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the motion, I just want to adjust it slightly. In part 2, it invites a councillor from each ward to participate. I did send an email out to all councillors just to determine which councillors were interested or available, and I got some responses. So I think I'll just amend that if Councillor Hogan agrees, just to name that council appoint the following councillors to the task group, and that would be myself, Councillor Holstein, sorry, we're right, Councillor Hogan and Councillor McGregor. And so in just speaking to that motion, councillors, as we've been talking about all night, we've been talking about the impacts of COVID-19 and the impacts on both our business community, but also those that are vulnerable in our community, were vulnerable, but are even now more vulnerable or have become vulnerable. Council has a limited role in delivering some of those social services, but we can have a role in coordinating and communication and clarifying what those roles at all level of government and across the sector are. I in particular want to thank Councillor Holstein and Councillor Hogan for their assistance in formulating this motion, and also the Director of Connected Communities, Julie Vaughan. So it really is time limited. It's being established for 6 months. The idea again is to communicate, to coordinate, to identify gaps in services or need, and work with a range of stakeholders to try and make sure that support, delivery and services provided are being done in a very efficient and effective manner. So I won't say a lot more because I know Councillor Hogan probably has more to say as seconder of the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Hogan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Jane Smith, for bringing this to the table, as well as Councillor Holstein. Look, we all know that COVID's unprecedented. We've experienced 3 great tragedies in our area, which has been the floods, fire, and now COVID, which is very unusual for a council to experience the 3. This motion is actually about identifying the roles and responsibilities, as Jane said, the role of council and the role of the community sector. In terms of these disasters, there's difficulties in the sector in identifying who's doing what. You know, there's this mass, as people are saying, what's the state doing? What's local government doing? What's federal government doing? But in all of this, it actually always trickles down to the bottom, which is our community sector. So it's about saying, well, what are we doing? How are we doing it? But how do we communicate that, which is the most important thing? Some of the issues that have come out of that, obviously, is depression, suicide, DV, all those issues that we talk about, poverty, isolation, and of course, the people that's affecting our residents, which is our businesses, as Councillor Marquette says. I know for me, community sector's been working 60, 70 hours a week to feed people, to find out what's going on, to work on the ground. It's not good out there. It's as simple as that. But it's not just our businesses. It's our teachers. It's our nurses. It is our entertainment industry. It's our hospitality industry and many others. To get a handle on the JobKeeper job seeker and what's going on there, well, that's another story to be had. So what we've got in our community is people that are really crying out for some help. They're crying out for financial help, social help, and mental help with their emotional needs. So that's what this group will try and formulate. What's actually, so when there's another pandemic, and hope there isn't another one, or when there's another crisis, because, you know, they're coming through, we've had a hat trick, so that we're actually more prepared for rolling these things out and actually communicating to our residents. This is where you can get financial help. This is where you can get emotional help. This is where you can get help across the board. And one of the other interesting areas that's been impacted our childcare centres. So when we talk about the devil's in the detail, very much with a lot of these packages, the devil's in the detail, and it's not getting to the people that we should be getting it to. But I'd like to say huge congratulations to Gary Murphy for his leadership through this, and the LET, and of course, Madam Mayor. You've really demonstrated that we do have leadership, we do have skills, we're pretty smart in what we're doing, and I congratulate you for keeping all our staff on as best as you can, and especially our apprentices and trainees. And we hope we can move forward to COVID to a really good outcome on the coast, but I can see everybody's working towards this. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hogan. Councillor Holstein.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, Councillor Hogan and Councillor Smith have said it all. I just wanted to reiterate one aspect. Councillors, with the current climate and what we're experiencing, there will be people who will suffer issues of financial stress, homelessness, mental health, DV, that have never ever found themselves in that position. And I've mentioned on several occasions on the social aspect, communicating that information to people. The one thing I have seen constantly is people who suddenly find themselves in this position that didn't know, have no idea. And somebody said to me the other day, I'll just Google it. It isn't as simple as that. People finding themselves under stress don't always make the most sensible decisions. Our ability as a local government to help communicate that information out there, people. We are not going to provide the services of council. That's not in our ability. Not to do what state and federal should be doing, but to be able to relay and to communicate information to people who never have been in that position, to ensure that the information is out there, that they are getting communicated with, is going to be foremost in the times ahead. It's been said by several people tonight how they've seen the impact of the COVID and what it's doing to communities. A lot of people don't know where to go, where to turn, and what to do. If this task force can relay in whatever way further information to people to get that support where needed, as I said, in DV, mental health, homelessness, financial stress, putting a meal on the table, if we can communicate that better so that our community doesn't suffer, then the task force will have implemented in the coming 6 months what it needs to. And I do hope that it's no more than 6 months we have to do this, but I support the motion. I commend Councillor Smith and Councillor yes, thanks, Mum, for their efforts in putting this up. It really is needed, and I hope that all councillors will support it. Hogan and Smith have, and myself have talked about it with Julie Vaughan. We think we've got a need there in our community, and I hope everybody will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holstein. Councillor Vincent, you're up.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. To Deputy Mayor Smith, I'm wondering if you could accept 2 amendments in the motion.
Fly it. You want to add something?
I'll put the amendment, and then I'll see what Councillor Smith says. Firstly, having heard you speak about the task force, I think it sounds terrific. And if you could amend it to include my name on there, that would be appreciated. And secondly, if we could have 0.5, and I have spoken about this in some of our briefings, but it's not detailed here, but And I'm open for staff, Director Vaughan, if you'd like to help with some words, appropriate wording, but words along the line of that council assess the possibility of working with local businesses that can help stem the pandemic. And for example, I mentioned a few times about businesses that may be able to manufacture face masks, businesses that may be able to manufacture the adapters that would turn a ventilator into a single ventilator to a quad ventilator with 3D printing, and other businesses that we may have on the coast here, which would help generate employment, but also help target, stem, reduce the impact of the pandemic and the virus if and when it hits our local area. That can extend the pandemic. I don't think that's the word. It should be that can help stem or reduce.
Councillor Vincent, can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't know if I was muted or not. Councillor Vincent, there is some work that's being done through the Economic Development and Business Task Force. So I'm not sure whether or not, and so that particular task force has a focus on supporting businesses. So both through, grants, etc. I mean, the Director of Innovations and Futures may be more appropriate to answer that, and it may reduce the need for you to actually add that as a additional recommendation for this particular resolution. So I think Ricardo is online, so I might just pass to him for the moment just to see if that addresses your concerns.
He's got no volume. Oh, is it dead? He can't hear me. Yes, he can hear. He just can't. We can't hear him. Tap, tap.
Hello?
Yes, that's it. So you got to tap, tap.
Thank you.
The magic tap.
Thank you, Julie, and through you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, as you will know, we've established an economy task force for the Central Coast. That initiative has been up and running since pretty much the first week of shutdown. The purpose of the task force is to bring together Central Coast Council, Business New South Wales Central Coast Industry Connect, Regional Development Australia Central Coast, the New South Wales Government, and we also have federal government members involved to assess the impacts of COVID and respond with local initiatives aimed at stimulating business and government investment, maintaining jobs, and helping businesses withstand the effects of the health and economic crisis. The task force has taken a lot of time to assess the impacts and understand how the employment and business opportunities on the coast have been impacted. We've also put out a few initiatives to support businesses transition to a digital platform. So there are some training courses and other things available, and we've been coordinating the transition of businesses to support different supply chains, such as you suggested, Councillor Vincent. So I just wanted to make you all aware that that's up and running. There's a website, centralcoasteconomy.com.au, where people can go to and identify resources. And the purpose of this task force is very similar to what has been outlined for the Social Impact Task Force. It's around coordinating efforts and making sure that we're pointing people to the right direction where they can get support and where they can get the relief that they need at this time.
So then I'd ask Councillor Smith in relation to point 6.
So in relation to point 6, Councillor Vincent, I'd probably just like to modify it because it's not perhaps not the work of the social task force, but I'd be happy if you just want to say that Councillor requests further information through the CEO on any consideration from the economic task force on working with local businesses, on activities that might help stem the pandemic. So I just wondered through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Martello, would that be an okay request to ask the task group just to provide some information?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is certainly a reasonable request, and we will continue to provide updates to councillors on all activities involved in the Economy Task Force. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vincent, are you happy with that?
Thanks for that, Madam Deputy Mayor. That's good. That council request, or should it be the, I suppose, council request? And I'd hope that the task force would have some, or the two task force would have ongoing dialogue between each other. So we might, could we ask for the director, I always say your name wrong, sorry, Mataro, to maybe come and have discussions at the social task force as well.
Happy to do that, Councillor Vincent. It probably doesn't need to be in the motion though, but happy to do that. And in terms of putting yourself forward, thank you very much. That's great. Councillor Hogan, are you happy to accept those? Yeah.
Okay, councillors, are there any other questions? Or there are no hands, nobody's written me a question. Therefore, I will come back to you, Councillor Smith, for right of reply.
No, I'm fine, Madam Mayor.
Okay, councillors, I will now move the motion, put the motion forward, 7.5, in the name of Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Hogan. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Louise? I think she's still reading. I'll just call the vote. Councillor McGregor, Councillor Matthews, Councillor Sundstrom, Councillor Best, Councillor Holstein, Councillor Mertens, Councillor Gale, Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Burke, Councillor Pillen, Councillor Marquette, Councillor Hogan, Councillor Vincent, Councillor Smith. Against? Abstention. Is that an abstention, Councillor Greenaway? Sorry, you're on mute. Can somebody unmute her? Okay. Sorry. Yep.
I just didn't think 6 was fixed yet. But anyway, if it is, I'm for it. I just didn't think it was what the Deputy Mayor agreed to. But anyway.
Okay.
Is that what was agreed to, Deputy Mayor? The wording there? Just looks like
look, it probably just needs a bit of tightening up, but the intent is there, which was just to get a report through the CEO on some of those initiatives or consideration of those initiatives that Councillor Vincent referred to, rather than this task group do it themselves. Yep.
Okay, councillors, I'll quickly retake that vote just so we get everybody's hands. Okay, therefore I'll just recommit the vote. Thank you. It is unanimous, Councillor Marquette, I take it. Thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Well, councillors, I now, I guess, close the meeting at 9:30. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for your efforts tonight. I think that went really well. Thank you to staff who have been working tirelessly to get this up and running, and I think you've done a great job. And I look forward to hearing or seeing everybody's faces again on Friday for our update with Mr. Murphy. So thank you, everybody, and see you next time. Thank you, viewers. Bye.